Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Marvel. Meet Wanda and become the strongest saint. Chapter 81. With a crack sound, a pair of metal claws stabbed out. After Wolverine Logan gained a new ability, she tore off all the bandages on her body, revealing her strong muscles. She stood with her hands in front of her body. Looking at the pair of metal claws, excitement flashed in her eyes. Roar. After a roar, Wolverine retracted his metal claws and looked at Subai with great solemnity. He knelt down on one knee and put his right hand in front of him, which was the knightly ceremony of an ancient knight to express his allegiance. Give me 3 days, I will kill Sabretooth and then come back to fulfill my promise. Wolverine asked Subai for advice. Subai blew a breath, turning the bandages on the ground into imperceptible particles, and said softly, "Go." With the consent, Wolverine left the castle, with endless hatred and fighting spirit, to find his enemies to slaughter. After Wolverine left, Subai couldn't calm down. Subai sat upright, using the small universe to feel everything in the world. There was always a sense of hostility in his heart, as if Wolverine had infected him with hatred. Inexplicably, Subai's brows gradually wrinkled. Do you want to destroy? Destroy everything. You have such power, destruction can make you more powerful. A low-pitched voice began to linger beside Subai. The source could not be found, but it was still there. Subai opened her eyes suddenly. The words contained infinite magic power, causing the veins on Subai's hands to bulge. There was a hint of blood red in his eyes. Subai gritted his teeth, finally understood the reason, and squeezed out 3 words, Dormammu. The surrounding environment changed rapidly, and he suddenly fell into endless darkness. After the darkness, there was an endless sea of stars. Subai realized that he had become a tiny particle. In the sea of stars, a huge figure rose quietly. His head was made of flames. He casually held a star in his hand, looked at Subai, and kept chuckling. Subai, I want to get it. My power. The power to destroy the entire universe. Power, isn't it what you have been pursuing over and over again? Roll. Subai's small universe burned to the maximum, and a fire phoenix slowly rose behind him. At this moment, the eyes of the fire phoenix had a ray of darkness. This time, everything was in vain. The surrounding scenes did not disappear. In this universe, he is as small as a speck of dust. Dormammu's arrogant laughter came, and when he pointed at Subai, Subai felt his body expand rapidly. Between his breaths, he stood shoulder to shoulder with Dormammu. With a slight movement, the stars shifted. How it feels, this is the power of darkness. Dormammu's hand ignited with blazing flames, and with a wave of his hand, countless planets exploded and destroyed, conveying the breath of death and despair. The magic in his words seemed to be to guide Subai. Try to use the dark power within the body. At this moment, Subai's whole body was tense, persisting under the endless impact of demonic thoughts. Just when he was about to reach the limit, a familiar figure exclaimed in his ear, Subai. After thinking, Subai suddenly regained consciousness. Dormammu's eyes were filled with unwillingness and disappeared together with the scene of the sea of stars. After everything melted into darkness, Subai's sight returned to the normal world. The surroundings were already in chaos, and the walls collapsed. He could see Diana in front of him, staring extremely nervously, with beads of sweat on his forehead. Behind Diana, there were 10 Amazons standing in the distance, all breathing heavily. They left Paradise Island with Diana and came into contact with the outside world. Not long after arriving in London, they saw this scene in front of them. The pressure released from Subai was even more powerful than when he was on Paradise Island. It was suffocating. He floated in the air, and a fire phoenix shadow appeared behind him, tearing apart all the objects around him. The fire phoenix's eyes kept switching between red and black. Only Diana could resist the pressure released by Subai and moved closer to Subai step by step. It was Diana's shout that integrated divine power that pulled Subai's consciousness back to the real world. Has Dormammu already targeted me? In fact, after defeating Caecilius, Subai had made such preparations. It was precisely because of these powerful beings, such as Ancient One, such as Dormammu, that gave Suku the motivation to become stronger. Didi Zhao unexpectedly today, Dormammu suddenly took action, trying to draw Subai into the darkness like he bewitched Caecilius, taking advantage of Subai's desire to become stronger. This seamless devil seemed to have found a good opportunity, but Diana's sudden appearance disrupted this plan. Even so, Subai still felt the power of Dormammu, which was different from all the hallucinations Subai had experienced. It was like being dragged directly into an alien space. If Subai was seduced by Dormammu, the consequences would be unimaginable. Subai, what's wrong? Diana wiped the sweat from her forehead and held Subai in her arms with great worry. Diana was extremely worried and held Subai tightly in her arms. Just now, Subai, who seemed to be destroying everything, made Diana feel strange. She endured huge amounts of pressure, and every step she took was like a drowning traveler, shouting constantly, and Subai woke up. Until this moment, Diana suddenly understood what she was thinking. What Diana didn't want to lose more than her tribe was Subai. She actually regretted going to Paradise Island alone and letting such an accident happen. Subai, are you okay? You scared me to death just now. That power with the aura of destruction doesn't look like you at all. Subai also felt uncomfortable and felt exhausted. He just said, "It's Dormammu," and said no more. Diana frowned. She also learned from Merlin's mouth the horror of Dormammu. This demon who rules Dark Dimension will definitely be the natural enemy of Subai and Diana. Diana supported Subai, made a gesture to the Amazons behind her, and walked towards the castle. These first batch of Amazons who came out of the outside world originally respected Subai. After seeing Subai's terror today, they became even more cautious. They were all cautious. Only after Diana's reminder did they gradually let go. After Diana returned, there was no sign of invasion by Dormammu for the next 2 days. On the third day, the golden sign Subai placed on her waist suddenly flashed with colorful lights. Today should be the day of celebration for the Asgardians. Subai and Diana came to an open space, and a colorful light pillar rushed into the sky. The air waves were rolling. Not long after, a figure walked out of the light pillar. It was Ajdj, the heroic Sif. Sif looked completely different today. He deliberately took off his battle armor and put on a gold-trimmed dress. Welcome you two to Asgard. The master has been waiting for a long time. Sif smiled quietly and bowed slightly. She was indeed like a goddess in mythology, dignified and elegant. Subai and Diana looked at each other and were about to walk into the colorful light pillar. At this moment, a hoarse voice sounded, "Take me one." In the surprised eyes of the Amazons, Wolverine Logan, wearing a black leather jacket, walked out of a path. The depression on his face dissipated a lot, and he looked like an attractive and strong man. Is that the American soldier? This was not the first time that Diana met Logan. She immediately recalled the pair of sharp claws on the battlefield. Subai nodded and said softly, "Now, he can be regarded as our companion. I helped him take revenge, and he is willing serving Leeds Castle. Trust me, he is absolutely reliable." "I hope it's the same as what you said." Diana nodded without much resistance. Subai chuckled and asked Logan, "How's it going?" Logan patted Subai's shoulder gratefully and said in a calm tone, "Very good, I beat his head into a rotten watermelon." The great revenge was avenged, and Logan felt a sense of relief in his heart. He would not break his oath and become a cornerstone of Subai. Subai nodded slightly, and then asked Sif, "How about, can we add one more person? It's fun when there are more people." Sif made a, "whatever," expression, "As long as you two go, a small condition doesn't matter, but your friend must know that Asgard is a rotten watermelon and beat him." Logan stepped forward and stared at Sif, his mouth and eyebrows full of rebelliousness. "That's not necessarily the case." The four of them stepped into the colorful light pillar together, and Bifrost's powerful space energy began to be channeled. After a round of spinning, the surrounding scene changed rapidly. In just a blink of an eye, when the line of sight stabilized again, they were already in a golden circular room. In the center of the room, there is a golden giant sword, which is the key to unlocking Bifrost. Behind the golden giant sword, there is a burly figure. Under the golden mask, only a pair of dark green eyes are exposed. Subai had seen these eyes before. It was the same pair of eyes that tried to pry into the secrets of Subai's heart on the battlefield. They were the guardian of Bifrost and Sif's biological brother, Heimdall. Looking into Hyrdam's dark green eyes, Subai couldn't help but grin. This bright smile made the expressionless guard feel a little embarrassed. However, Subai was not prepared to revisit the past at this time. Under Sif's guidance, the group walked out of the room and were immediately shocked by the mirror image in front of them. The golden sunlight is scattered, and the buildings of Asgard are magnificent and majestic. The highest castle towers into the sky. Huge amounts of city walls are built by giants, wrapping up the endless giant city. Stretching under your feet is the magnificent seven-color Bifrost and Bridge. On the other side of the river, there were Asgard's guards, with solemn expressions and shiny armor, reflecting golden spots of light. The guards lined up, and in the center, God King Odin was waiting in person. Although some of the guards had no expression on their faces, their hearts were already shaken and they couldn't wait to see who was coming. God King Odin was waiting in person. Throughout the history of Asgard, they are all extremely rare, which shows how important the visitor is and how much attention they receive. Everyone focused their attention on the opposite side of Bifrost. Not long after, a strange figure appeared on Bifrost. The first person to attract their attention was naturally Subai, who was dressed in holy robes. Even in a divine realm like Asgard, armor like the holy clothes is extremely rare, or even never seen before, and the faint cosmic aura Subai exudes is enough to let people know that this is a person with extremely powerful strength. Strong master. Needless to say, Diana, although the armor she wore was not as eye-catching as the holy clothes, her perfect face, tall figure, and goddess temperament made people unable to take their eyes off her. The only one who seems a bit out of place is Wolverine Logan. Everyone was wearing armor and battle suits similar to the classical mythology style. Only Logan was wearing a jacket and was observing everything in Asgard curiously. For Logan, this is simply an unimaginable and unseen mythical world. Logan follows Subai naturally to fulfill his promise, but he also has selfish motives. Only by following Subai can he become stronger faster and see a real world. Just like the Asgard in front of him, without Subai's support, you may never get there in your lifetime. This was a power that subverted Logan's cognition and originated from mythology. Logan couldn't help but feel excited. The only thing that made him a little unhappy was that the eyes that fell on him were not too friendly, and there was always a sense of amusement. At the same time, Subai was also observing the opposite side. Standing in the center is Odin. He wears a big golden helmet with two divine crows perched on his shoulders. He is wearing battle armor and has one eye covered by a golden cloth. Next to him is the god Queen Frigga. Charming appearance, wearing a white robe with a golden belt. Further behind Odin are Odin's two sons. On the left is Thor, who is staring at Subai with an aggrieved look. After returning to Asgard, Thor's contest with Subai was revealed, and he was scolded by Odin again. Moreover, after returning to Asgard, Thor recalled the previous contest and felt that there was no hope of winning. Thor really has a good fight with Subai again. It is not a simple competition of strength, but a battle with all his strength. Only by defeating Subai in such a battle can he win back his honor. On the right is Loki with a calm look on his face. Loki didn't seem to pay attention to Subai and Diana at all. Both his demeanor and expression looked very ordinary. Only his slightly narrowed pupils proved that he was still paying attention to everything that happened. After passing Bifrost, Odin took 2 steps forward and said loudly, "Welcome the heroes guarding Midgard and the daughter of God King Zeus to visit Asgard. I am God King Odin, and I offer my most sincere respect to you too." Quote. The guards uniformly raised their swords, and a clear war song was heard. Even if it was their first meeting, Odin seemed very enthusiastic and patted Subai's shoulder affectionately. When Subai found out, Odin focused most of his attention on Diana, and couldn't help but secretly thought, there is indeed something fishy about it. Is it because of the Greek god? Diana also did not expect that the God King and God Queen of Asgard would be very enthusiastic when they first arrived. God Queen Frigga even held Diana's hand and walked to Asgard's most magnificent palace. Walking out of Bifrost, there is a vast square. In the center of the square is a giant statue, which is Buli, the main god of the Aesir clan. The reason why Odin invited the two of them is precisely because today is a grand memorial ceremony and celebration for Buli. The way is to stage exciting fights. On both sides of the statue of Buli, there are 2 huge amounts of passages, leading to the legendary Soul Castle. After the brave warriors of Asgard die in battle, there is still the possibility of turning into heroic spirits and continuing to fight. The most famous one is the one who leads the heroic spirits, Valkyrie, Valkyrie. Judging from the order of the buildings, it is enough to see the martial arts level of the Asgard people. Almost every Asgard person has to pick up a weapon and try to go to the battlefield, which makes the competition in the square particularly lively. Passing through the center of the square, Odin smiled and said loudly, "How do you think? Heroes guarding the earth, do you have itchy hands? The warriors of Asgard are famous in the universe. Do you want to go down and compete to win the most willing fine wine?" Before Subai could respond, a voice that no one expected sounded. Logan took 2 steps forward and looked at the Asgardians who were competing in the square with great displeasure. "I want to go down and give it a try, what do you think?" Odin and other Asgardians were stunned. For a moment, they ignored the bearded man next to Subai. Who is he? Who is this guy? Most people in Asgard focused their attention on Subai and Diana. After all, the two were too dazzling. Few people paid attention to Wolverine Logan and only regarded him as an alternative who came here. When Logan came here, he felt a little unhappy. The way these Asgardians looked at him, they completely mistook him for a country bumpkin. When he heard that Odin invited Subai to compete, Logan was the first to be unable to bear it. He wants to go down and show these Asgardians some color. Odin was stunned. As soon as Subai and the 3 of them arrived on Bifrost, Heimdall had already sent the message from. He didn't pay too much attention to Logan's arrival. He also wanted to let Subai experience the Asgard people. Enthusiasm. Unexpectedly a Logan suddenly appeared. Odin couldn't help but look at Subai. Who is this? Subai shrugged and introduced. Logan, nicknamed Wolverine. After Subai's words fell, Logan immediately continued. Like these glittering guys, I am a guard, Subai's guard. I am ready to challenge you Asgardians, how about it? Odin showed a stunned expression, smiled and nodded, absolutely, you can challenge every Asgardian in the square. The Asgardians' ability to conquer and fight has already been tempered by other races in the universe. At this moment, the attention of the audience and thousands of eyes were all focused on it. Logan took out a cigarette from his pocket, held it in his mouth, lit it, took off his jacket, exposed his strong muscles, and walked towards the square. Go to the center. I'm a country bumpkin from Earth. Does anyone want to fight with me? Logan shouted. Subai couldn't help but chuckle. The expressions of some of the Asgardians beside him were quite exciting. However, after Logan killed Sabretooth, the anger in his heart has not completely dissipated, so he behaved like this. The people of Asgard were originally warlike, but when Logan provoked them in front of their faces, their emotions boiled over. Without waiting, an equally strong and muscular man walked out. Let me try your strength. The strong man roared angrily, and the surrounding Asgardians naturally dispersed, leaving a large space as a venue, and looked at the 2 people in the venue with interest. Seeing such a scene, Thor became excited and said to Subai, "Hey, this is your guard. What magical ability does he have that can resist the Asgardians?" As soon as Thor finished speaking, the strong man punched out. This punch directly hit Logan's abdomen. A huge force came and Logan flew backwards for more than 10 meters and reached the edge of the crowd. Oh, there were all kinds of exclamations and laughter in the field, and Thor laughed loudly. Subai, it seems that your guard is not very powerful, right? Subai spread his hands, and there was no trace of nervousness or confusion on his face. On the contrary, his eyes showed a sense of confidence. He believed in Logan's strength. You'll know after you read it. Sure enough, in just a blink of an eye, Logan stood up from the ground, moved his neck, made a clicking sound, all the muscles in his body were beating, and then shouted loudly, "Is this all you have strength? Take out your weapon. Quick, take out the weapon, otherwise it won't be exciting enough." The strong man hesitated twice, and at Odin's signal, he finally took out a shield and a warhammer. At this moment, Logan finally felt a little interesting. There was a fighting spirit in his eyes, a smile appeared on his face, and with a crack sound, the metal claws appeared. The cold light shining from the metal claws finally made the Asgardians feel nervous. It turns out that Subai's guard is quite capable. Logan roared angrily, took a step forward, exerted force under his feet, leapt high into the air, pointed the sharp claw of his left hand forward, and aimed at the strong man to stab him. There was no skill in this move. The strong man reacted immediately. As long as he raised his shield high to resist Logan's thrust, the next second he could smash Logan's head with his war hammer, if allowed. The moment Logan launched the attack, everyone was holding their breath in anticipation, but some Asgardians had already expressed their answers. That shield is made of alloy metal. That guy's hardness and defense, the strength is simply unimaginable. Oh my god, this claw is so painful that it hurts to death. Believe me, his claw will be broken soon. Not many people in Asgard are optimistic about Logan. This must be due to the home field advantage. Moreover, although Logan's claws penetrate people, they are still too slender compared to the giant shield, and they will probably break. There was a tearing sound, and the next second, Logan's sharp claws poked out, and amid the incredulous eyes of the Asgardians in the square, he easily penetrated the giant shield. The cold light shining on Logan's metal claws easily pierced the giant shield. The Asgardians in the square all stared at Logan with disbelief. No one expected that Logan's claws were so sharp. It was like piercing a piece of paper without spending much effort. Only the well-informed god King Odin whispered at the moment Logan succeeded, "It's Edmund alloy." When Logan stopped, the metal claw in Logan's hand was only a centimeter away from the heart of the giant and strong man. Even with a casual breath, he would touch the cold metal. Beads of sweat had already appeared on the forehead of this strong Asgard man. The moment Logan pierced his shield, he knew that he had lost. He never expected that this would happen. Staring wide, he took 2 steps back before showing admiration. He put one hand on his chest, showing no respect to Logan poison. "See, I told you to wait." Subai chuckled, and his words came out, which made Thor a little unhappy. How did Thor know that Logan still had such a trick hidden? After hearing Odin's prompt, he was a little curious. Why did Logan's bone claws? Is it Edmund alloy? This is unreasonable. At the same time, Diana also pinched Subai's arm and said in a very low voice, "I remember he wasn't like this last time, right?" "Why, his bone claws evolved all at once." There was a hint of smile and warmth in Diana's eyes when she looked at Subai. It was obvious that she had already expected that Logan's bone claws were closely related to Subai. "Did you build it for him?" Subai nodded, still focusing on Logan. After defeating the first opponent, Logan took a glass of wine, drank it happily and shouted 10 times, "Who else wants to challenge the people on Earth?" Quote. Suddenly there was a roar in the square, and another strong man walked up. Just like this, one after another, in less than 10 minutes, Logan directly defeated 15 Asgardians like chopping melons and vegetables. Although each confrontation was brief, it was a fierce confrontation. Moreover, this man named Logan was hit many times, but he still seemed to be okay. He has extremely strong recovery ability. After Logan won 10 consecutive victories, Thor began to try to analyze Logan's combat characteristics, and discovered a little secret about Logan. Obviously, Logan is a melee combat master who happens to be able to maximize the challenge in the square. Use his fighting ability. But for Thor, he only needs to maximize the power of thunder and lightning to cure Logan. Obviously, Logan will be very weak in the face of long-range attacks, and the means of attack are very single. Thor's tactical vision is indeed very good, but Logan in the square is still on a winning streak. Thor has to sigh. Birds of a feather flock together, and this Logan is also a monster. Thor was a little confused. Where did Subai find such a guard? The combat effectiveness of this guard is enough to match the combat effectiveness of many Asgardians. Some of the guardsmen who were still taunting Logan had already adjusted their expressions and at the same time retracted their arrogance. The look in their eyes when they looked at Subai was even more complicated. Even one of Subai's guards has such a powerful combat ability, but what about Subai? How strong does it have to be? These guardsmen used their imagination and combined it with some previous rumors. They heard that Thor, the son of God, once fought with this Subai, and Subai won. For this, the God King specially punished Thor. Thinking of this, some of the guardsmen were stunned. No wonder, such a powerful Subai is not easy to mess with even his guards. Logan won 20 consecutive victories and felt the changes in the eyes of the people around him. At the same time, he drank Asgard's wine and finally showed a long-lost smile. At this moment, Loki's voice suddenly sounded, "Attack with the enchanted ice sword, which can inhibit Logan's wound recovery speed. This is Logan's weakness, and the Asgardians can win." Odin heard this and immediately responded with some dissatisfaction. That's enough, Loki, this is just a competition. This is not a battlefield. Loki lowered his head, like a docile puppy, and retreated without a word of complaint. Subai saw this scene and sneered in his heart, Loki, he is a hungry wolf hiding in the darkness. Afterwards, the group went to the God King's palace in Asgard and performed a worship ceremony. Bulli is the ancestor of the gods in Norse mythology, and is also the grandfather of Odin. He has outstanding military achievements, so there is a festival to commemorate him. This is also one of the most important festivals for the Asgard people. However, the atmosphere was not always so solemn. After the memorial ceremony, there was a grand dinner. Thor, who had lost to Subai on Earth, seemed to want to regain his place at the wine table and toasted Subai desperately. It was during this dinner that Odin revealed his true purpose. As the dinner came to an end, Odin gradually revealed his true purpose. He and Queen Frigga each carried a glass of mellow wine and came to Subai and Diana's side. At the moment, the drinking fight between Subai and Thor had reached its climax. It is too difficult to get a saint drunk. Even Thor, who is extremely good at drinking, has entered a tipsy state. But after seeing Odin and Frigga, Thor immediately trembled and stepped aside. Odin swung the wine glass, his eyes revealed unreserved admiration, looked at Diana, and said softly, "It's so similar." Subai secretly thought MMP in her heart, knowing that this God King was going to start causing trouble. Fortunately, Diana was no longer the silly girl who had just entered human society. She metamorphosed at an extremely fast speed and raised the 12-point mark. Be careful, I wonder what the God King is feeling. Odin's face looked full of nostalgia for the past. He took a sip of wine and said, Diana, the moment you used thunder, do you know how excited I was? To be honest, I invite you two to come to Asgard. Definitely part of the reason is because the two protect the earth. But the most important reason. Diana, do you know that I am a close friend with God King Zeus? After Zeus disappears, I can see his bloodline lifting the thunder. One is very pleased. Quote, when Diana returned to Paradise Island this time, she asked Hippolyte about bloodline. It only confirmed what Subai said, that Diana was indeed the bloodline of God King Zeus. Diana was grateful to God King Zeus for making her so special, but she really had no feelings for this father she had never met. Therefore, Odin's memory did not make Diana feel any mood swings, and she responded with a few words. After all, this is Asgard, and in public, this God King must be given some face. After a conversation, Diana actually had a tendency to be aloof. Odin smiled bitterly in his heart, knowing that Diana probably didn't love her father, so he tentatively asked, Thor is my beloved son, and the entire Asgard. The most powerful warrior. Diana, this is not the first time you have met Thor, what is your impression of him? Thor stood aside, feeling a little embarrassed that Odin raised such a question. Diana curled her lips and said, every time I see him, I want to beat him. To be honest, he is quite annoying. Hey, let's go out and have a fight now. Don't speak ill of me in front of the God King. After hearing this, Thor shouted with dissatisfaction, but he knew that Diana was telling the truth, and his impression of Diana was equally average. Odin coughed awkwardly and cursed Thor secretly in his mind. He knew that his reckless son might only be liked by female warriors like Hill, but Odin still tried and said with a smile, Thor sometimes does reckless, but unlike Thor, my other son Loki is one of the most capable magicians in Asgard. He is gentle and knowledgeable. Diana, do you want to meet him? After saying that, Odin looked at Loki sitting on the other side. Speaking of this, Subai finally understood that Odin, the old fox, was probably not only trying to get Diana's idea, but also wanted to inherit the entire Greek pantheon through Diana and make Asgard the orthodoxy of the earth. Dominate. Subai didn't wait for Diana to answer, and immediately coughed, interrupting the conversation between the two, and said loudly, God King, I must interrupt, I need to remind you that in fact, I have already lived with Diana, and she is my girlfriend. So, please don't always mention other men in front of Diana. This makes me very disgusted. There was a sudden silence in the place, and many boys and girls drinking wine turned their attention. Gods like Odin and Frigga, who are getting older, don't know the terms girlfriend and cohabitation, and they still have some doubts. They just feel that Subai's tone is very serious, it doesn't sound like a joke. And Diana's little face turned red after Subai said it. Her heart beat faster for some reason, as if a deer was bumping around. Because of the shyness in her heart, she wanted to refute Subai. Thoughts. They are indeed living together, ba ba ba. They have just lived together for a long time, but they are not a couple at all. After all, Subai hasn't confessed her love yet, so they can't be considered a couple. But in the current situation, does it count as a confession of pregnancy? Hearing this, Logan, who was drinking on the side, gave Subai a thumbs up without saying a word. After Thor reacted, he laughed twice and started clinking glasses with Subai again. Others were watching the fun. The young Asgardians suddenly became interested and began to cheer and shout out. Only Odin hesitated for a while. Girlfriend. Diana blushed and her voice became very low. She pinched Subai's shoulders and whispered, I already have someone I love. I already have someone I love. As soon as these words were spoken, the atmosphere of the entire banquet reached its climax. In the entire palace, only Odin looked unhappy. He did not expect that Diana was already married to a famous woman. In Odin's view, regardless of all aspects considered, Diana is definitely the best candidate for the next generation. After the Greek pantheon fell apart and the gods disappeared, Diana was the last bloodline of Zeus. She was fully capable of carrying the banner of the Greek pantheon. By marrying Diana, she would have inherited one of the Earth's native pantheons, Orthodox. Since then, no one can call Asgard people alien anymore. The relationship between the Asgard people and the legal association will not be so awkward or passive. Not to mention that Diana was originally gifted by the gods. Whether it was her appearance, her personality, or her original ability, she was the best choice for the throne of the Queen of Gods. Diana is one of the noblest and most powerful women in Asgard and even the entire universe. Praising Diana as the god queen of Asgard can be regarded as Odin's best explanation for his best friend Zeus. From the moment he met Diana, Odin thought it was a perfect plan. But Diana's answer was like a bucket of cold water poured on her. Subai made a high-profile announcement. Although Diana did not respond directly, she had already acquiesced in the relationship between him and Subai. This delicate and beautiful flower had actually been picked by Subai first. Now Subai is already a winner. How is that possible? Odin thought to himself, a little reluctant to believe this fact. He couldn't help but use the corner of his eye to look at the god queen Frigga beside him. The two have been together for who knows how many years, so Frigga can naturally understand what Odin means. Not only is she the queen, but she is also the goddess of love in Asgard, able to discern the mysteries of love. Although Frigga had the opportunity to observe Diana before, she did not use her special ability out of etiquette. Now helpless, an imperceptible light red flashed across her eyes, and her vision changed significantly. In Frigga's eyes, Diana was exuding a light red energy all over her body. This energy was like mist, drifting towards Subai, and Subai had the same light red energy coming out, two strands of it. The energy converged in the air, forming the shape of a heart. Frigga shook her head suddenly and came to her senses. Unknowingly, she was being shown affection. However, based on the current situation, Frigga can be sure that the two of them do love each other and will soon enter a state of passionate love. Contrary to what Odin thought, Diana really had someone in her heart and did not just make up a lie just to reject Odin's kindness. Seeing Frigga's slight nod, Odin understood that there was nothing he could do about it. If he could get Frigga's approval, the relationship between the two must be unbreakable. There will no longer be too much interference from the outside world. Odin couldn't help but sigh in his heart, and turned to look at Subai with some depression. I didn't expect that this guy is also proficient in the art of love. Being able to win Diana's admiration can already be considered a great achievement. Thinking of this, Odin slapped Thor lightly on the back of the head. Drink less and stop making noise. Look at my son Thor. Not only did he lose slightly to Subai in the first contest, but he was also thrown out of his position in love. Thor, you should be more careful. If it weren't for Sif, this girl likes martial arts, and they happen to be the right match, but alas, they didn't even find a place for the next generation of Queen of Gods. In this warm atmosphere, even if Odin said it himself, Thor just shrank for a while, and then walked to Subai's side, just like other Asgardians who loved to join in the fun. Cheering and toasting, This is a celebration, and it is undoubtedly more joyful. Diana's little face had already turned red. She couldn't believe that she had said such shameful words just now. However, she and Subai were originally separated by a body, but now they were close to each other. Holding Subai's arm, she proved her feelings for Subai with actions. Subai also had a smile on her face and happily accepted the blessings from the Asgard people. From time to time she looked at the more beautiful Diana, whose smile became even brighter. This dinner lasted until midnight. The Asgard people gradually dispersed, but God King Odin rarely left the table. When it finally calmed down a little, he still looked at the affectionate Subai and died in depression. Anna moved her lips, but still chose to say, "Subai, Diana, you two come here, I have something to give you." Odin knew that as long as Subai didn't make a mistake, there would be no room for a comeback. Now he could only accept this reality unwillingly. There was no doubt that he suffered a defeat in the hands of Subai. But as a close friend of Zeus and a former comrade in arms, Odin still wanted to fulfill the obligations of an uncle. "Come here, there is something that belongs to you in my treasure house." Under the leadership of Odin, Subai and Diana came to a golden red hall. There were 3 times as many guards here as in other places. After entering, a broad avenue appeared in front of them. This avenue looked like a big tree extends out many branches, and each branch is a room. The door is translucent and you can see what's going on in the room, but this translucent metal has extremely strong defense and is difficult to break through from the outside. The items placed in each room are all items of great origin. They are artifacts of various races that Odin has collected from the universe. When he walked to the 8th room on the left, Subai raised his eyebrows. Just now, he saw a glove-shaped object. If I guess correctly, that glove just now is the Infinity Gauntlet. Subai knows how terrifying the Infinity Gauntlet is. There are a total of 6 infinite gems, the most powerful infinite gems in the universe. As long as you collect 6 infinite gems, you can easily destroy 99% of life in the universe. If you want to use the powerful energy of 6 infinite gems at the same time, 6 gems must be set on the Infinity Gauntlet. I don't know where Odin collected the Infinity Gauntlet from, but it was obviously not the item Odin wanted to display. After walking through another room, Odin stopped. The door was opened, and quietly displayed in the center of the room was a light blue round shield. There were many damages and gaps on the surface of the shield, and there were more than one black mark. It could be seen that this shield was in the flames of war. It has been tempered a lot. Odin looked at this shield and felt nostalgic. The most famous equipment of God King Zeus is the thunder and Aegis, which is the shield of Zeus in front of him. Subai and Diana both focused their attention on the shield. Unexpectedly, this shield was the shield of God King Zeus. The Aegis of Aegis is equipped with the strongest defensive spell. Even thunder can hardly cause much damage to the Aegis of Aegis. But such a shield was almost destroyed in the war between gods 100 years ago. Thinking of this, Odin sighed. The war between gods in the Greek pantheon 100 years ago was a war that shocked the entire solar system. Mount Olympus fell into the turbulence of time and space, my friend Zeus disappeared, and the Greek main god was secretive. It is unbelievable. What a brutal battle. Subai once heard that Merlin mentioned the war between gods 100 years ago, but Odin in front of him only gave a general outline. He was a little curious and asked again, "Does the God King know the details of the war between gods 100 years ago?" Odin shook his head with a bitter expression and said, "Olympus, like Asgard, is the domain of gods. Only by entering it can we find out. Later, I also inquired a lot and found out some secrets." During that divine war, the main gods of Greece were divided into 2 factions. One faction continued to support God King Zeus, and the other faction, headed by Ares, attempted to establish a new divine dynasty. As Odin spoke, he walked forward, took off the Aegis of Aegis, and rubbed it in his hands. Although the 2 factions have the same number of people, the sun god Apollo, the god of the underworld Hades, the god of the sea Poseidon and other powerful the gods are standing behind Ares. At this time, Subai finally understood that 100 years ago, Zeus was besieged by the gods. You must know that among the 12 main gods of Greece, the ones with the strongest combat power are the ones just mentioned. Now it seems that Ares is just a fuse, but more like a puppet on the surface. If Zeus really abdicates, it is unlikely that Ares will sit on the throne of the God King. Hearing the name of Hades, the god of Hades, Subai thought of the statue of Hercules with his wrists broken off and weeping blood at the gate to Hades underground on Paradise Island. Could it be that Hades, the god of the underworld, did all that? Just when Subai was thinking, Odin looked sad and handed the shield of Aegis to Diana. I searched in many ways, but only found this side of the shield that was about to be destroyed. Now in the entire Greek pantheon, only Diana, you can rekindle the flame of glory of the Greek god. It is a great blessing that the Aegis of Zeus can be handed over to the descendants of Zeus. Diana took the shield and was a little confused for a moment. It was another artifact from her cheap dad. Okay, but this one was seriously damaged. As if he could see what Diana was thinking, Odin smiled and said softly, "The dwarfs of Nidwell have superb craftsmanship and are extremely good at making artifacts. I have long planned to recast Aegis. I don't dare to overstep my bounds, but the materials have been prepared for a long time. Tomorrow you two can go to Nidwell to recast the shield of Zeus." As expected, Odin still showed his true colors as an old fox. Even if he could not keep Diana in Asgard, he still had to establish a friendly relationship. After all, in Odin's view, Diana had great hope of ascending to the throne of God King, not only because of her originally, moreover, there is also a Subai. After telling the story related to the shield of Aegis, Odin felt quite sad and went back to rest without staying with Subai and Diana. Somewhat similar to Zeus, Odin also had many children. However, he was more wise and decisive than Zeus in terms of successors to the throne of the God King. He only left 2 godsons, which can be said to be one. In fact, deep in his heart, Thor had already been crowned king. Under the leadership of a guard, Subai and Diana arrived at the resting residence. Whether intentionally or not, they only arranged a room for the 2 of them. The huge Asgard, the huge palace of the God King, definitely has a lot of spare luxury rooms, but the pink color used by Subai and Diana at the dinner party gave people the illusion that only one room is enough. The 2 of them had already slept together when they went to London. Normally, they should not be so nervous and unfamiliar, but this time, both Subai and Diana had some unknown emotions. A hint of red appeared on Diana's smiling face. She stepped over, pinched Subai's arm, and shouted, "If you hadn't suddenly said that at the banquet, this wouldn't have happened." Subai was not polite, grabbed Diana's little face, and pulled hard. "Anyway, I don't allow anyone to hit your attention." Diana rolled her eyes, then became a little shy. She turned away and said in an inconspicuous voice, "Odin's 2 sons, how can they compare to you? Oops." Diana stamped her feet and started arguing with Subai again, but not long after, there was a knock on the door. When she opened it, it turned out that it was Sif in a long skirt, holding a disc in his hand, coming to visit. Sif noticed the couple-like play between Subai and Diana, and a trace of envy flashed in his eyes, but he quickly adjusted his expression and placed the disc on the table. On top of the disc, there were 2 storage rings. "Subai, this is the Gamanian and silver star sand you want, Aji." Long ago, Sif had promised to find 2 materials for Subai to make holy clothes, and now he has come to fulfill his promise. Subai was a little surprised. After thanking him, he took 2 rings and checked them out. He found that there was a lot of silver star sand, but the most critical gamma neon was too little, which was not enough to create a piece of gold. Holy cloth. In Subai's hand, there was a lot of silver star sand and a lot of vibranium, but the amount of gamanium was not enough, which was very unsatisfactory. But Subai doesn't blame Sif. Subai didn't pay anything to get these materials. It was entirely Sif's voluntary help. And judging from the quantity, Sif still put a lot of thought into it and didn't deal with it easily. For both parties, this is sincerity enough. After all, Sif is not the god King Odin. Before becoming Thor's wife, the resources he could use were limited. After thanking him again, Subai asked, "Sif, do you know where Gamanin is produced?" Actually, most of the Gamanian is in the hands of dwarves. They are alchemy geniuses and tend to collect all the alchemy materials in circulation. Odin asked me to lead the 2 of them to Nidwell early tomorrow morning to recast the shield of Aegis. I wonder if there is a chance to exchange it from the dwarf. Sif leaned forward slightly and was talking when suddenly a clear bell rang, interrupting her words. The sound of the bell resounded throughout Asgard, making the entire divine realm brightly lit again. The sound of uniform footsteps sounded. When I walked out of the door, I saw groups of guards rushing towards the treasure house. Logan, who lived in another room, was also awakened and ran out to join in the fun. His nose twitched twice and his eyes met Subai's, seemingly asking, "Would you like to come over and take a look?" Subai shook his head. "This is Asgard. Before things get out of hand, everything will be solved by the Asgard people." From Subai's observation, the god King Odin at the moment is so powerful that he is not as powerful as Subai imagined. In critical condition, in front of Odin like this, the invaders cannot make many waves. As expected, Sif quickly came back after resigning and explained to Subai and the others, "It's a group of frost giants who want to steal the ancient winter coffin." Norse mythology is a polytheistic system, which can be roughly divided into 4 systems: giants, gods, elves and dwarves, distributed among the 9 realms. Giants are the earliest beings and gave birth to the gods, but they are also the biggest enemies of the gods. The gods are divided into 2 tribes, the Aesir tribe headed by Odin, and the Vanir tribe headed by Njord. Elves and dwarfs are demigods and they serve the gods. Frost giants are a branch of giants and the mortal enemies of Chuan Ding. The god King Odin defeated Loth, the leader of the frost giants, and seized the ancient winter coffin thousands of years ago. This is not the first time that the frost giants have come to steal the ancient winter coffin, but this time, they chose the wrong day. Speaking of this, a trace of anger appeared on Sif's face. Today is the most important day of the Aesir clan, the celebration of the birth of the ancestor god. To steal treasures on such a day is a blasphemy to the entire Aesir clan. The actions of the frost giant cast a shadow over this celebration. Or maybe this was originally a provocation by the frost giants, deliberately choosing this important day to cause trouble for the Asgardians. But for Subai and his party, this can only be regarded as an episode. Early the next morning, Subai and Diana each woke up with dark circles under their eyes. Although they slept in the same bed, they both stayed up all night. Sif was already waiting outside the palace, preparing to take Subai and Diana to Nidwell to recast Aegis. She didn't seem to be in a good mood, and her worries were all written on her face. After seeing the conspicuous dark circles on Subai's face, she showed a smile and said, "Didn't you sleep well last night?" Subai coughed, immediately changed the subject, and asked softly, "How are the frost giants that invaded last night?" When the frost giants entered the treasure house, they were already killed by the destroyer, which is one of the most powerful weapons in Asgard. And those frost giants will also pay the price for this. Sif's voice fell, but he was a little worried again. Subai secretly thought in his heart, "Isn't it because Thor is going to find trouble for the frost giants?" After traveling through time, the butterfly effect was too great, let alone a comprehensive comic book world, and Subai could no longer determine the trajectory and occurrence of some things. Hill was not prepared to bring up this topic. The group walked through Bifrost in silence, and with Heimdall's permission, went to Lee de Wefa. Not long after Subai and his party left, another pair of people appeared on Bifrost. It was Thor and Loki. Behind the two of them, there is a team of 10 Asgard warriors. They are well equipped and have tough faces. They are all elites who have been polished. No one in Asgard is allowed to use the Rainbow Gate to teleport without permission. When Thor and Loki approached the end of Bifrost, they naturally slowed down. With a smile on his face, Loki walked towards Heimdall, but before he could speak, Heimdall's voice came out, "You are not dressed warmly enough." The expressions on the faces of Thor and Loki were all condensed. Unexpectedly, Heimdall had already discovered the plan to go to the country of frost giants to regain their place. "You must have misunderstood." There was a sneer on Loki's face, as if he wanted to argue with Heimdall, but Thor behind him couldn't help it anymore. "Okay, Heimdall, can you let us pass?" Heimdall glanced at Thor and then focused on Loki. "To this day, no one has been able to bypass my surveillance. I want to know why." Obviously, Heimdall was referring to the frost giant breaking into the treasure house last night. This is not the first time that frost giants have come to steal treasure, but in the past few times, Heimdall had already discovered him before entering Asgard, and yesterday he actually broke into the treasure house. Heimdall suspects a traitor. The power of the spell obscured his senses. As one of the strongest magicians in Asgard, Loki was naturally suspicious. But Thor didn't have time and didn't notice the hidden meaning in Heimdall's words. He never doubted Loki and just wanted to pass Bifrost quickly. You want to know why? Then don't tell anyone before we come back. Where are we going, do you understand? After saying that, Thor ignored Heimdall's expression and walked directly towards the teleportation station. Heimdall was also helpless. After all, he already knew Odin's decision. Thor would be the next generation of God King. After glaring hard at Loki again, Heimdall opened the portal without any purpose. On the other side, after a lot of chaos, Subai and his party arrived at the dwarf's territory. What appeared in front of us was a high mountain, full of potholes, and the sound of ding dong dang dang kept echoing in our ears. 0. There is a huge amount of magic furnace installed on the side of the mountain, which is burning with light blue flames. From time to time, dwarfs throw objects into it to smelt the shape of the appliance. Most of the dwarfs were less than 1 meter tall, and few were more than half that. After they felt the energy fluctuations, they all poked their heads out of the tunnel and looked at the visitor curiously. When they found out that it was Sif, they immediately became respectfully. A dwarf elder came up to greet him. It was not the first time for Sif to come here. He found the leader of this group of dwarfs with ease, an old dwarf with sparse hair and a hunched back. This is Ada, the most famous alchemist master of the dwarf clan today, the son of God King Odin. The eternal spear was built by his father. Ada saluted Subai respectfully. As a servant of God, he had already received the message from Asgard. Today there will be distinguished guests, and there is a very important task, to recast the shield of Aegis. For this old dwarf, this is a job full of honor. However, Subai's eyes wandered over the ore placed behind Ada. Do you have a lot of Gominium here? Gominium, there definitely is. As long as there are alchemical materials that exist, they were all hidden in the dwarf's treasure house. Ada patted her chest, with a vowed look, and Sif also responded and helped. Ada, the distinguished guests of Asgard need a batch of Garmanion, let the dwarfs bring it out. Ada's face showed a smile unique to profiteers, rubbed her palms, and said with a smile, "It is an honor for the dwarfs to serve the distinguished guests of Asgard, but this is not among the orders of the God King, and Garmanion is a very precious alchemy material. Even for dwarves, the stock is not too much. In short, the dwarfs need star crystals to hand over Garmanion. This is a deal. Definitely, the dwarfs will give the best price." Sif frowned slightly. Star crystals are the common currency in the galaxy, but Earth alone does not have the crystal veins to produce star crystals. Subai came from the Earth. How could he have enough to buy a batch of Gominion star crystals? Sif couldn't help but thought to himself, this Ada must be taught a lesson after Subai leaves. Fortunately, Sif also brought 100,000 star crystals with him, so he should be able to buy a batch of Gominium. But why did Subai collect so many alchemy materials? Diana and Logan did know some details about Subai. They knew that Subai had smelted Edmund alloy before, so he should have some alchemical foundation. Is it to smelt the holy cloth? A bold guess emerged in Diana's mind. After Subai understood what Ada meant, he was not too surprised. After all, there is no such thing as a free lunch, and Subai really does have such things as star crystals. In the Kree spacecraft, Subai captured a large amount of star crystals, nearly 1,000 tons. Without saying anything, Subai took out the storage ring and poured out about 3 tons of star crystals. The crackling sound kept ringing, and in 2 breaths, the star crystals piled up like a hill. Ada's eyes widened, their eyes were full of light, and even her saliva was about to flow out. Star crystals, so many star crystals. 1. Sif also looked at Subai in surprise. She never thought that Subai could produce so many star crystals. For a large force alone, about 3 tons of star crystals can only be considered ordinary, but for an individual, it is already a huge amount of wealth. Her star crystals are all calculated in units, while Subai doesn't have much idea about star crystals and uses tons to calculate them. The gap between the two can be seen how obvious it is. How much Gominium can be exchanged for these 3 tons of star crystals? The dwarf Ada rubbed her hands, and her eyes were filled with excitement. She was indeed a distinguished guest from Asgard. She hadn't been to the rich man for a long time. Ada didn't want to cheat Subai on the price. After all, with Sif here, the dwarf's lies would be exposed immediately. Ada was calculating another idea. This distinguished customer bought so much Gamini. Well, it must be a powerful piece of equipment. Is there any better alchemist in Asgard than the dwarf? The dwarf can make a good profit from the production fee and processing fee. Ada nodded and bowed, showing great respect to Subai. He immediately blew a whistle, and nearly 100 dwarfs poured out of the nearby tunnel and began to count Subai's star crystals. The final conclusion was that 310,000 pieces is enough to buy a large amount of Gamanium. At this time, Subai opened the storage ring again and poured out all the remaining star crystals. Bring up all your Gamanium, I bought them all. The expression on Subai's face was calm and calm. Ada and Sif were shocked. They didn't expect that the star crystal Subai just took out was only a small part. With such a huge sum of money, even Sif couldn't help but exclaimed, Subai, how come you have so many star crystals? Sif is a person who has seen the world, and has even entered the treasury of Asgard, but Subai took out so many star crystals, which is really a foul. You must know that Sif's entire net worth is only about 1 million star crystals. Looking at Subai's eyes, I couldn't help but feel curious. How could an earthling collect so many star crystals? Sif couldn't understand. Diana also couldn't figure it out, so she came over and whispered in Subai's ear, where did you get so much money? These dwarfs were almost frightened. Subai made a mouth gesture, If the dead Kree leader knew that Subai spent such a huge sum of money so casually, he would definitely vomit blood in depression. That was the loot they spent 3 years plundering from the colonies in the 4-star regions. After further trade, a huge sum of money from the Kree Empire will have to be handed over. It's almost like being spent by Subai. After the initial excitement of the dwarfs, it soon turned into distress. Their usual alchemical consumption was also very huge, but they did not expect that Subai was a predator who bought the dwarfs' Gamanium short. Dear guest, you have taken out a total of 12 million star crystals. After deducting the cost of purchasing Gamanium, there are still 1.13 million star crystals left. Gamanium is a precious alchemical material. If you still need it, the dwarves will mine it as soon as possible. Do you still need Gamanium? Ada kept rubbing her hands together and kicked a dwarf who was passing by. It was this guy who accidentally failed in alchemy the day before yesterday and wasted a lot of Manyan. Subai shook his head. He had already understood from the Wheel of Time in his mind that the materials Subai had collected were enough to evolve the Phoenix Saint cloth into the Golden Saint cloth, and it was also enough to create another set of Golden Saint clothes. Clothes are enough for Subai now. Ada didn't want to give up yet. He always felt that Subai had bought so much Gamanium. He couldn't have kept it, right? Dear guest, do you need Gnome to help you build equipment? Gnome is the best alchemist in the entire 9 realms, and the fee is cheap. As a distinguished guest of Asgard, you can enjoy a 50% discount. Sif also came up to persuade. Subai, if you have any equipment to build, you can indeed give it to Ada. Their alchemy skills are very superb. No need, I'll do it myself. Just now, after collecting all the materials, Subai had exchanged the holy cloth alchemy from the Wheel of Time. After a rough browse, he found that only the saints could forge the perfect holy cloth. The steps of the alchemy of the holy cloth seem to be very simple. They are divided into 2 steps. First, smelting the materials. Second, using the power of the small universe to outline the star map, arranging it on the inner layer of the holy cloth, and guiding the power of the stars to wash it. The holy garment will automatically take shape. It seems simple, but in fact it is extremely difficult. Just to smelt materials requires an extremely high temperature furnace, not to mention that to create a set of holy clothes requires understanding the star charts of the 10 constellations. Fortunately, the ready-made magic furnace can be used, and I am already familiar with the star map of the Phoenix constellation. Upgrading the Phoenix constellation Saint cloth to the Golden Saint cloth has an almost 100% success rate. As for the second Golden Saint cloth, you have to think carefully about which constellation to choose. Subai pondered for a while, but he didn't expect that what he said just now caused waves again. This time, Ada stopped looking like a profiteer and became a little angry. What did he hear? In front of the dwarf, Subai actually said that he would personally go into battle and build equipment. Do you distrust and look down upon this group of the best alchemists in the 9 realms? Dwarfs have been discriminated against because of their short stature. Their only advantage is alchemy. Even their only self-esteem is despised. Naturally, they feel uncomfortable. Su-bai then asked, "Can you lend me your magic furnace?" HMPH. Definitely, you are a distinguished guest of Asgard after all, but it must be done after the dwarves have completed the God King's order and successfully built the Aegis. After saying that, Ada turned around coldly, which was in stark contrast to her eager look just now, causing Su-bai to chuckle softly. "I know these dwarfs have taught me a lesson." But Su-bai was too lazy to explain, and instead used the remaining time to familiarize himself with the alchemy of the holy clothes. Time passed by, and soon all the dwarfs on the mountain were busy, like ants moving the materials for recasting Aegis to the front of the magic furnace. The magic furnace of the dwarfs is 100 meters high. To them, it is a huge door. The flame in the magic furnace never goes out and can melt any metal. It is precisely because of this magic furnace that it is a huge door. The dwarfs have a place to stand. While the other dwarfs were busy, Ada kept exchanging various ideas with Diana. It was obvious that this master alchemist wanted to make Aegis into a classic artifact. After clearly understanding Diana's thoughts, Ada began to take action. Various metals were thrown into the magic furnace and turned into liquids of various colors. They were then led by pipes and flowed to the large workbench. The recasting process took 3 days and 3 nights. Until, on the day when the Aegis recasting was completed, dark clouds suddenly filled the sky, and a huge thunder struck down the Aegis. The entire shield was covered with dense inscriptions of lightning. It circulates and exudes a breathtaking power. Holding it in her hand, Diana felt that Aegis seemed to be celebrating its new life, and she cheered with joy. Diana was very satisfied. Others also looked at Aegis with envy and surprise in their eyes. There is no doubt that this artifact has been reborn. Ada herself was very satisfied, but the smile on her face gradually faded, and she stared at Su-bai provocatively. "The work of the dwarfs has been completed. Distinguished guest, it's your turn." "Ada, you should speak more modestly." Sif glanced at Ada with dissatisfaction and found that the latter's attitude had not changed much. Su-bai did not dare to do this, but took a deep breath, a light flashed in his eyes, and began to create his first golden holy garment. Su-bai took a deep breath and began to make his first golden holy garment. He first took out enough materials to evolve the Phoenix Saint cloth. Unexpectedly, 3 hills of materials immediately stunned the nearly 10,000 dwarfs present. Because of the recasting of Aegis, half of the dwarf clan became busy, and knowing that Su-bai was going to challenge alchemy in front of Ada, they all stayed with the attitude of watching the show, wanting to see how Su-bai would be embarrassed. What kind of courage did he have to make alchemy in front of the dwarf? Unexpectedly, Su-bai actually took out a large amount of vibranium. Compared with the other 2 materials, vibranium appears to be more upscale. Although there is no alchemy material in Oedipu's seaport that the gnomes do not have, they all know how powerful and precious vibranium is. Only the Kree Empire can exchange some of this metal, and there is simply not enough demand, and there is no way to mine it. Only a very small number of existences know the true origin of vibranium. At least the dwarves don't know which place can produce such a precious metal. For alchemists, the most attractive thing is alchemical materials like vibranium. Suddenly, exclamations came one after another, and all kinds of envious, jealous and hateful eyes were focused on Su-bai. Ada was even more angry and trembling. Oh my God, what did he see? Such a large amount of vibranium was enough for him to make a powerful artifact, and even obtain the glory of surpassing his father's generation in building the eternal spear. And Su-bai actually wanted to take action himself, causing him to miss such a great opportunity. For an alchemist, it is already an honor to be able to use such top-notch materials for alchemy. Ada growled in fear and paid more attention to Su-bai's movements. He wanted to see how Su-bai made the equipment. Su-bai quickly took action, and his actions once again silenced the entire audience. The Phoenix Saint cloth on his body automatically took off, and after throwing the 3 materials out of the magic furnace one after another, the light red Phoenix constellation star chart appeared behind him, and a clear sound reminded him that the Phoenix Saint cloth had also been thrown into the magic furnace. Ada pointed his hands at Su-bai, his eyes widened, his face was full of disbelief, and he was trembling with anger. He simply couldn't believe that Su-bai started smelting so roughly and directly. This is not even comparable to a fledgling alchemy novice. Alchemy is an extremely complicated and rigorous process, and each process has extremely strict requirements. In Ada Kailai, just smelting vibranium requires 13 processes to obtain a perfect vibranium solution. And this novice alchemist actually threw that gorgeous armor directly into the magic furnace. You must know that the high temperature in the magic furnace is enough to melt all the equipment. Using natural things violently. This is using natural things violently. You are not an alchemist at all. Ada waved her fist vigorously, stood on tiptoes, and yelled angrily, Subai was wasting precious alchemy materials. Be quiet. At this time, there was a crackling sound, and Wolverine Logan frowned and showed his metal claws. If you make any more noise, I won't mind throwing you into the stove. Ada gasped violently, and when she saw Logan's Edmund alloy claws, she was stunned again. Oh my god, this guy actually absorbed the Edmund alloy into his body. Monsters, 2 monsters. Ada covered her face with one hand, unable to believe Subai's alchemy results. Sif at the moment also felt a little guilty, so he came to Diana's side and asked in a low voice, can Subai really know how to alchemy? Subai put the materials into the magic furnace and sat down cross-legged without any movement. Compared with the busyness of the dwarfs before, the contrast was really huge. Diana nodded firmly and said, I don't know, but I believe in Subai, he won't do anything he's not sure about. Quote, at the moment, Subai has pushed the power of the small universe to its peak and entered the most complicated process, engraving all the celestial bodies of the Phoenix constellation into the patterns of the holy cloth. A constellation may not necessarily have many planets, like the solar system, including Pluto. There are only 9 planets, but there are definitely hundreds of millions of celestial bodies. The production of each piece of golden holy clothing is not that simple. Each celestial body must be integrated into every tiny structure of the holy clothing, symmetrical to it Nuo Li Jiao, and form a perfect star map. Only then can it be called the Golden Saint Cloth. Subai's mind has sunk into the star map of the Phoenix constellation, using the power of the small universe to constantly modify the interior of the Phoenix constellation Saint Cloth. On the first day, Subai remained sitting upright without any movement. The next day, still no movement. At noon on the third day, when everyone was puzzled and the dwarfs even started to snicker, a bright golden light suddenly rushed out from the magic furnace, and a phoenix cry spread throughout Asgard. Feeling the powerful power that suddenly emerged, Ada's lips actually started to tremble. God, artifact, a new artifact is born. Chapter 91. Pale golden light continues to emit, and a powerful force has risen, covering all nearby creatures. Ada, who had experienced this feeling before, already understood that a divine weapon was actually born in the magic furnace. Impossible. How can such crude and unstructured alchemy be successfully smelted, and still be of the quality of an artifact? Ada was already yelling in his heart, but no matter how unbelievable he was, the golden light in the magic furnace still emitted, and became more and more dazzling, like the scorching sun, and even the surrounding temperature increased several points. Waves of phoenix chirping sounded, and fine beads of sweat appeared on Subai's forehead. The small universe was also burned to the limit. The extremely tyrannical pressure spread, bringing with it a shockwave, blowing away the dwarfs with wide eyes and dull expressions. Amidst countless exclamations and sighs, a phoenix reborn from the fire spread its wings and rushed out of the furnace, bringing with it a burst of red, spreading its wings and soaring under the sky, dyeing half of the sky red. This fire phoenix is really too huge, with golden pupils and a wingspan of nearly a kilometer. The phoenix feathers are full of burning flames, like a living creature, floating in front of Subai. With a cry, a beam of light red light floated out of the fire phoenix and merged into Subai's forehead. Even Subai, during the process of creating the golden holy robe, reached the limit of her mental strength. When this light red light blended in, she felt a warm current filling her body, and most of her fatigue was swept away. Subai stood up, stretched out his right hand, and touched the fire phoenix lightly. Another cheerful phoenix cry sounded, and this scene shocked everyone. Subai actually succeeded in creating an artifact. Judging from the scene in front of him, it is still an extremely powerful artifact. Diana's little mouth opened slightly. She was the only one who understood. She knew that Subai's holy cloth had evolved again. Although she had obtained the Aegis of Aegis, it was impossible not to be envious of it. It was at this moment that all the firelight converged and condensed into a point, a set of golden holy clothes of the phoenix seat, suspended in midair. Sif, who was used to seeing artifacts, couldn't help but exclaimed, how could there be such gorgeous armor in the world? She thought that Subai's original set of armor was enough to become synonymous with gorgeousness, but compared with the golden holy clothes in front of her, still a little worse. Sif can be sure that even in the treasure trove of God King Odin, it is difficult to choose a more gorgeous armor. She looked at Subai with eyes full of shock and a hint of admiration. Just 3 days ago, she was still doubting whether Subai really had the ability to alchemy. Now, she feels ashamed of her previous doubts. Subai is not only a powerful warrior, but also an extremely outstanding alchemist. How one person can be so good in 2 fields, Sif is a little confused. This man is so mysterious and magical. The charm of the golden holy Ajda clothes was too strong. The dwarfs who had just been blown away struggled to get up from the ground and surged up behind Subai crazily. Their movements were surprisingly continuous. They knelt on their knees and crossed their hands on their hands. On the shoulders. This is the highest praise from dwarfs. For an alchemist, there is nothing more worthy of bragging than witnessing the birth of an artifact. This will become their bragging capital for a lifetime. They looked at Subai with admiration and shock. Unlike recasting the Aegis of Aegis, Subai completed the smelting alone, using an alchemy method that the dwarfs had never seen before. Moreover, the Aegis of Aegis was originally a powerful artifact, and in terms of difficulty, it was far inferior to Subai. Ada, the elder of the dwarf clan, knelt down in front of the golden holy robe and Subai in a prostrate posture. Ada was already convinced. He never expected that Subai would really be a master of alchemy. Thinking of his previous actions, he actually had the idea of dying to apologize. Not only did he offend the distinguished guest of the God King, but he also despised a person. A master who refined a divine weapon, lost face. At this moment, Subai seemed to be isolated from the outside world. In his eyes, there was only the golden saint cloth of the phoenix seat. The power of the small universe spread out, and the golden saint cloth automatically attached to his body. The brilliant golden holy clothes cover the whole body, with the sharp claws of the phoenix protruding from the shoulders. The texture of the front body vaguely condenses the shadow of the phoenix. Behind him are the folded golden wings, and a bunch of phoenix feathers fluttering in the wind. Putting on the golden holy clothes, Subai immediately felt that the small universe had received a huge bonus, and was only one step away from the 7 senses. And with constant power, the golden saint cloth also has the special effect of absorbing sunlight and converting it into combat power for the wearer, not to mention the defensive power originally possessed by the golden saint cloth. Behind Subai's mind, the prompt of the Wheel of Time also sounded. Congratulations to the master for completing a milestone achievement, obtaining a golden holy garment. Because of the owner's own efforts, he obtained a golden holy garment. Congratulations to the owner for receiving a hidden reward, 10,000 redemption points. Getting 10,000 redemption points was an unexpected surprise for Subai. Subai felt the joy conveyed by the Phoenix Saint cloth. It was precisely because of Subai's familiarity with the Phoenix star chart that he was able to successfully metamorphosis. The eyes of other people were also attracted to Subai. Subai, who put on the golden holy clothes, exuded an incomparable power. It was at this time that a bell suddenly sounded in the sky. It had the same tone as the night of the celebration, but it was more urgent, bringing the thoughts of all the dwarfs and Sif back to reality. This is the highest level of emergency, order. Sif seemed to have remembered something, and the expression on his face suddenly changed, and he suddenly became anxious, and said, "We must go back immediately, something important is happening in Asgard." Thor, something must have happened to Thor. The other dwarfs stared at the sky with some fear. In their impression, the number of times such a bell rang was very few. Sif took out a golden disc in his hand, and immediately a colorful light beam came down from it. Bifrost's energy channel has been opened. Subai looked at the magic furnace, but there was no hesitation. He turned around, looked at Diana and walked into the passage. Before making the Phoenix Golden Saint clothes, Subai had thought about whether to build 2 sets of Golden Saint cloths together. After having successful experience in making them, Subai realized that this process was far from being as simple as imagined. Even for the Phoenix constellation star chart that Subai is most familiar with, it takes all his effort to outline it into the holy cloth, let alone the star charts of other constellations that he is not familiar with. Definitely, Subai has not determined which guardian constellation the second golden holy garment corresponds to. Subai is in the hesitation between Gemini and Virgo. He has also thought about the golden holy garment of Ophiuchus, but he was not prepared in advance. This is very likely to be a process that lasts for months, or even years. It may not be until you break through the seventh sense that you have enough ability to understand the second guardian constellation. After a brief blur of vision, when it recovered again, it was already in Asgard's teleportation room. It was very different from the previous Asgard. In front of Bifrost, in the vast sea of stars, a giant teleportation gate had been opened. Spaceships kept rising from the buildings of Asgard and entering the portal at extremely fast speeds. The entire domain entered a state of war, and the roaring sound was endless. In Bifrost's teleportation room, Heimdall's golden sword kept emitting thunder. The Watcher had used all his strength to prop up a large passage that could allow an army to pass through. The war between the Asgard people and the Frost Giants has begun. God King Odin has gone to the world of Frost Giants, Jotunheim, to rescue the trapped sons of God Thor and Loki. Heldam's calm voice came, causing Sif's expression to change again. Before heading to the country of the dwarfs, Thor summoned his friends and held a secret meeting. The heir of the God King wanted to restore the glory of Asgard, decided to secretly raid Jotunheim, letting the Frost Giants realize in the bloody light that Asgardians are not so easy to insult. Sif once persuaded him, but she had the mission of the God King, and she didn't expect that Thor's arbitrariness exceeded her imagination, and she implemented this slightly crazy plan so quickly. Heimdall's gaze paused slightly on Subai's holy clothes, and his eyes flashed green again, looking at the battlefield far away in Jotunheim. Thor and Loki are not feeling well. Even if the God King Odin took action, they could not save them. The two of them, Lof, the king of Frost Giants, have awakened and are in a stalemate with Odin. Zero, please give me flowers. It seems that the Asgard people are in trouble. Diana walked to Subai and whispered softly, with a fighting spirit in her eyes. She had just obtained the Aegis of Aegis and couldn't wait to show off her skills. Logan stepped forward, lit a cigar, held it in his mouth, and whispered, "Maybe they will be even more surprised when we get to the battlefield. Wolverine is really not someone to be trifled with." Zero. Although the first meeting was not pleasant, Logan quickly gained the respect of the Asgardians and became congenial with these guys who advocated martial arts. Sif and Heimdall also stared at Subai with expectant eyes, and there was even a hint of pleading hidden in Sif's eyes. Subai's power is obvious to all. In the war between Asgard and the Frost Giants, Subai may become the key force that determines the entire battle. Congratulations, Master, for triggering the main quest. Go to Jotunheim. The war between Asgard and the Frost Giants has begun. Master, please show the power of the Saints and win victory for Asgard, our ally. Mission goal: kill Frost Giants. If the number exceeds 10,000, you will receive the mission reward. Task reward: 10,000 redemption points. Does the Master accept the mission? Amid everyone's expectant eyes, a smile appeared on Subai's lips. Let's go to the Jotunheim entrance. Jotunheim, a world of snowy mountains and glaciers. The huge space channel tore open the gray-white sky, and Asgard spaceships kept emerging from it, emitting light blue light. At the same time, Asgard warriors wearing golden armor jumped out one by one, landed, and fought with 3-meter-high Frost Giants, together. Gray-white snow and frost kept falling, and many of them were stained with warm blood and melted halfway. Frost Giants have gray-white skin, and most of them use giant battle axes. If they swing them hard, if they hit the ground, a crack will appear. They are huge and have extraordinary control over power. From time to time, they will let out hoarse roars to command them to feed. The giant frost bear launched unparalleled charges again and again. Not long after, another white frost dragon flew out from the surrounding snow mountains, trying to dominate the battlefield in the sky and fight with the Asgard technology spaceship. The Frost Giants who follow the ancient precepts are not as vulnerable as they imagined. They have the greatest hostility towards the Aesir clan, who are developing technology and divine power at the same time. The warriors of Asgard wield warhammers and giant swords. These cold weapons are equipped with the power of technology and use kinetic energy to produce powerful tearing effects. On the golden armor, light blue lines shine, which is powerful energy that can resist physical attacks. The shield barely withstood the Frost Giant's full blow. Viewed from a high altitude, the entire battlefield is divided into 3 parts. Under the space passage, 100,000 Asgard warriors fought with nearly 30,000 frost giants, blood spilled and white frost fluttered. On a glacier not far away, nearly 1,000 frost giants formed a circle. In the center, the 5-meter-tall frost giant tribe leader held a giant hammer and besieged the 2 sons of Asgard. Mjolnir in Thor's hand kept shining with lightning, attracting the power of endless thunder, bombarding the entire battle formation of the frost giants. At the same time, layers of ice crystal protective shields rose up, reducing the power of thunder in sequence. Even if there were charred corpses falling, still can't stop the bloodthirsty nature. Thor roared angrily, and Mjolnir slammed to the ground. Thunder rippled and thunder snakes surged. He finally repelled a wave of attacks. Even though he was as powerful as him, he began to pant and fell into a hard fight. His physical strength was exhausted to the point where he could see it. Thor already understood that they were ambushed by the frost giants. It was originally just a small assault, but it attracted the siege of all the frost giants in Jotunheim, and even triggered a bloody battle between the 2 races. The war that had been extinguished for thousands of years was rekindled. Beside him, Loki separated out 12 duplications, each of which cast a different spell, bombarding the frost giants that were approaching faster and faster. His face was expressionless, and there was a gleam of hatred hidden in his eyes. The palm of Loki's left hand has turned light blue, which is very similar to the skin color of the frost giant. His heart is shaking, his magic power is stronger, and it is almost crazy. In the farthest distance, on top of the frost throne, the 10-meter-tall frost giant King Lof held a frost demon spear in his hand, with red light flashing in his eyes, fighting with Odin. Odin, without the Tesseract, you are no match for me. This is Jotunheim, the world of ice and snow, and it is my domain. I am the only god king and master here. The frost demon spear collided with the eternal spear, and the huge force that rippled out shattered the snow-capped mountains, causing the surrounding space to sway. Lof, this is an unexpected war, stop it. It's true that the Tesseract is no longer in my hands, but you don't have the ancient winter coffin. This is a battle with no winner. The spear of eternity in Odin's hand stabbed continuously, and its momentum was not inferior to that of Lof, but Odin knew in his heart that it was indeed as Lof said, this is a world of frost, and Lof's originally tyrannical strength has been greatly enhanced. Frost-white mist has appeared on Odin's armor. Lof snorted coldly, today, even if you don't die, Odin, the entire Aesir clan will still be buried with you. As soon as he finished speaking, Lof suddenly let out a long roar, and the whole earth began to tremble. Boom, boom, boom. In the frost, a figure nearly 100 meters tall appeared, and then he grabbed it and tore up the snow-capped mountains in front of him. Those blood-red eyes took the entire battlefield into their eyes and roared. The huge waves brought up blew away all the fog. It has pieces of white-gray fur, 10-meter-long fangs, and its claws are like hooks. It touches the ground with its hind feet, and roars and hisses, the sound shaking the world. Even Odin's pupils shrank slightly when he saw it. This is the most powerful war beast. Frost Behemoth. The entire battlefield fell silent, and even the frost giant hesitated for a moment, then let out a crazy shout and organized a sharper offensive. Frost Behemoth jumped up, crashed to the ground, swept his claws, and easily took away a small team in the Asgard battle. Even if you are brave and good at fighting, it is not enough to deal with this frost behemoth. Asgard's morale has obviously been affected, showing a slight decline. It was at this time that a flash of red suddenly appeared in the space passage. The long-standing frost began to melt, and the surrounding temperature increased rapidly. A giant fireball with a radius of 100 meters suddenly appeared on the battlefield. Like a shooting star, it suddenly fell from the bowl. The giant fireball with a radius of 100 meters, like a comet, slammed down in front of the endless impact force. The target is the besieged battlefield of Thor. The sudden appearance of the giant fireball was no less shocking than the appearance of Frost Behemoth. All Asgard warriors turned their attention at this moment and watched the fireball fall in anticipation. There was a loud boom. The air waves were churning, and traces of heat were rising. The permafrost under the ice was burned to black, and the explosive impact spread, tyrannically repelling dozens of frost giants. With this blow, a giant deep pit was formed, and in the center, a figure slowly emerged. Wearing golden holy clothes, the shadow of the fire phoenix appeared behind him, with a resolute face. When he spread his wings behind his back, a strong hot wind was generated. Swing out. This blow reduced all the frost giants in front of him to pieces. They didn't even have time to scream. Whether it was snow mountains or ice fields, they were all smoothed away, showing a smooth plain. The power of the blow was so terrifying that the entire battlefield fell into silence, with only the roar of Frost Behemoth echoing. Seeing the person coming, Thor couldn't help but be overjoyed. While waving the Mjolnir in his hand again, he shouted, "Subai, it's Subai here. This person in golden armor can only be Subai. Only Subai can exude such tyrannical pressure, such bile." For some reason, Thor felt reassured when he saw Subai appear on the stage, as if he had been given a shot in the arm, and he no longer had the panic he had before. Subai's gaze scanned the entire battlefield. With the power of one blow, no giants of Jotunheim dared to look at it. He chuckled, and once again condensed a little bit of golden light in his hand. It was divided into 100, which was the surrender of the demon. The attack speed of this golden light spot is infinitely close to the speed of light. How can the strong but slow-moving frost giant react? Muffled groans sounded together, and another 100 frost giants fell down, like mowing grass. Subai's battlefield dominance was so terrifying. Only in this gap did Thor have the opportunity to spin Mjolnir, and his body flashed quickly and appeared beside Subai. The two of them were back to back, and a large number of frost giants surrounded them. Their eyes were full of bloody light that was fearless of death. "Why are you here just now? I have to say, your armor is getting better and better, isn't it because you have to paint it?" Although it was a question, there was some unconcealable joy in Thor's tone. Subai curled her lips, a smile appeared on her face, and said softly, "Am I also in your plan?" Thor laughed loudly, "Definitely, I have no plans left. It's a pity that you are surrounded by frost giants, otherwise you still have a chance to escape back to Asgard." Subai shrugged and couldn't help but complain. At the same time, another lightning flashed in the air, a thunder struck down, Diana's figure emerged, thunder was thrown out, and lightning pillars scattered in all directions. Under the teleportation channel, Sif and Logan also entered the battlefield. The reinforcements have finally arrived, the timing is just right. Thor grinned and spun Mjolnir in his hand again. "To be honest, Subai, it feels so good to be your teammate." Subai pointed at Frost Behemoth. "In that case, I'll leave that giant beast to you to deal with. Don't underestimate me." The next second, Thor's figure turned into a bolt of lightning, and with fighting spirit surging in his heart, he forcibly opened a gap in the frost giant's defense line, and bombarded the side of Frost Behemoth, which actually made Frost Behemoth stagger. At the same time, endless golden light emerged from Subai's body. In an instant, half of the battlefield was shrouded in golden light, and all fighting in the area stopped. Both the frost giants and the Asgard warriors stopped, just because pieces of huge stone inscriptions appeared in front of them. Countless huge stone inscriptions emerged, forming huge golden walls. The huge walls were stacked one after another to form a golden space that stretched endlessly. It was the most powerful secret of the Virgo Golden Saint, the heavenly dance balloon. On the huge golden wall, the icon of Subai sitting upright appeared. After further learning the mysteries of space, the heavenly dance wheel became more perfect. Even Odin and Lof who were fighting were slightly stunned. "Amazing." Lof roared angrily. "King Zhao, Odin, this is not the power of Asgard." Odin chuckled lightly, with unreserved admiration in his eyes, "But this is the power of justice." In the Tianwu balloon, tens of thousands of frost giants and Asgard warriors could only raise their heads and look up at Subai floating in the air. At this moment, Subai was the absolute master of this space. As he whispered softly in his mouth, an almost lawful power rippled out. Sensory deprivation. Deprive the visual land. Deprive yourself of hearing. Deprive yourself of your sense of smell. Deprive your sense of taste. Deprived of touch. In the blink of an eye, tens of thousands of frost giants lost their fighting power, like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. In the Tianwu balloon, tens of thousands of frost giants failed to put up any resistance and were deprived of their 5 senses. Only with the blessing of the Golden Saint cloth and the small universe burning to the limit, Subai was able to do all this. But this is not the end yet. Su-bai opened his hands, and the golden light condensed in his hands, turning into golden lotus flowers. He whispered in his heart, "The devil surrenders." Hundreds of golden lotus flowers were flying, and the petals of the lotus were imprinted on the forehead of the frost giant, which was the death of a life. This was a silent death scene. The Asgard warriors looked at everything happening around them in horror. Each of the frost giants turned into golden light spots without any resistance. Disappear in this strange space. What kind of power is this? Watching all this happening, the Aesir Protoss who entered the heavenly dance wheel had already developed an instinctive fear of Su-bai. This kind of power is already close to the power of a god king. This Su-bai, who is not famous in the universe, actually has such strength. Just the golden holy clothes emitting golden light was enough to dazzle these warriors. Golden lotuses kept floating out, and not long after, the frost giants in the entire Tianwu Baolun had become sparse, and tens of thousands of frost giants were destroyed in the blink of an eye. Congratulations, Master, for completing the mission, killing 10,000 frost giants. Earned 10,000 redemption points. When the prompt of the Wheel of Time sounded, Su-bai breathed a sigh of relief. A ray of golden light appeared in his eyes, and the special space built by the Tianwu Baolun gradually dissipated. Even now, Su-bai, who has supported such a huge space for a long time and controlled tens of thousands of lives, feels huge amounts of pressure, and his physical strength and mental energy are consumed very quickly. Fortunately, the effect of the golden holy clothes began to take effect. It absorbed not too much power of sunlight from the gray-white sky, gradually filling Su-bai's exhausted physical strength. And Aja, the Asgard warrior, felt free again, as if from another world, looking at Su-bai with a ray of fanaticism and admiration. Su-bai, so strong. The warriors who had not entered the Tianwu Baolun only saw a huge golden space holding up half of the battlefield. When the golden space disappeared, not a single frost giant came out of it. The entire battlefield fell silent. Whether it was the Asgard warriors in the spaceship or on the ground, they were all shocked by Su-bai. Is this still a human from Earth? Countless exclamations rang out, which were quickly covered by the hiss of Hydro Behemoth. In a corner of the battlefield, Thor was fighting bitterly against Frost Behemoth. It is worthy of the Frost Behemoth that Loth has given high hopes to. Every blow can make the earth tremble. With both claws tearing forward, it actually tears through the thunder net built by Thor. Frost Behemoth jumped up, swung his huge claws horizontally, and collided with Thor's Mjolnir, knocking Thor thousands of meters away and crashing into a snowy mountain. Thor, who had already fought hard for many rounds, was not very physically strong. This Frost Behemoth's tyranny exceeded everyone's imagination, and it firmly gained the upper hand in Thor's battle. If there are still variables in this battle after Su-bai appears, it will come from these 10 Frost Behou. Su-bai's pupils shrank. This giant beast that I have never seen before is a bit difficult to deal with, but what is there to be afraid of? After winning consecutive battles, Su-bai already had a sense of confidence and pride in his heart. His body flashed quickly and he was in front of Frost Behemoth in the blink of an eye. Compared with the 100-meter-tall Frost Behemoth, Su-bai's figure was slightly smaller. Behind Su-bai, a fire phoenix shadow with the same huge amounts suddenly appeared. From top to bottom, the phoenix wings flew out, the fire phoenix spread its wings, flapped its wings, and bombarded the lower jaw of Frost Behemoth. Frost Behemoth's huge and solid body was hit by this move, and his body was slightly off the ground, with his whole head raised upwards. But its defensive power was really astonishing. After it hit the ground, it immediately stood up. The red light in its eyes was strong, and it vaguely entered a state of madness. It clenched its claws into a fist with its left hand and let out an extremely powerful wave that was disproportionate to its body shape. Quick punch. Careful. Thor, who had just climbed out of the snowy mountain, couldn't help but exclaimed when he saw the scene in front of him. No one could resist Frost Behemoth's punch head-on. But Su-bai, the small universe burned to the limit in an instant. Without any fear, he also punched out. A 30-meter large fist collided with an ordinary person's fist. This scene was so impactful and shocking that even the fight between Odin and Loth stopped at this moment. Amidst the roar, the veins on Su-bai's forehead popped out. This punch was also a punch with all his strength. Even Frost Behemoth didn't expect that the human in front of him would have such terrifying power. Dead silence. Everyone whose eyes were focused here opened their eyes as wide as possible, wanting to marvel, but they seemed to have lost their voices and could not make any sound. After a brief stalemate, the winner was determined in an instant. Su-bai's punch actually knocked the frost behemoth away. There was a loud boom. The 100-meter-tall frost behemoth was blown away with a punch by Su-bai, a human. After retreating 100 meters, Frost Behemoth crashed into a snow mountain, unsteady on his feet, and fell to the ground. Countless ice crystals flew. This picture was so shocking that there was an eerie silence on the battlefield of brutal fighting. Such a small figure forcibly knocked away a giant beast. Is there anything more inspiring than this? After a brief silence, a wave of cheers and excitement broke out among the Asgardians, and even the power of wielding weapons became stronger. However, a faint cowardice and despair spread among the frost giants. This person from Asgard, who is wearing gorgeous golden armor and has never been seen before, is so powerful that he is not even a match for Frost Behemoth. Did you lose? With this thought in mind, the frost giants' battle array was retreating steadily. After a full blow, Su-bai pursued the victory and turned into a ray of golden light, appearing above Frost Behemoth. A crazy fighting spirit appeared in his eyes, and he kept punching out with both fists. Su-bai's current punch speed is close to the speed of light. Every punch fired is like a strand of golden thread, woven into a giant golden net. No one dares to come close. Every second passed, Frost Behemoth's cry of pain could be heard. Frost Behemoth, who was invincible in the eyes of others, was being brutally killed by Su-bai at this moment. Thor swallowed his saliva after seeing this scene, and actually sympathized with the Frost Behemoth. He turned his head angrily, looking for other frost giants as opponents, and kept chanting, "This giant beast. Sigh, just leave it to Su-bai." Su-bai threw tens of thousands of punches before floating into the air again. Apart from anything else, the endurance of the giant beast in front of him was definitely top-notch. The Saint's Fist, which can destroy atoms, bombarded Frost Behemoth's fur, but it only caused it to scream in pain without causing any substantial damage. Without saying a word, Su-bai punched out with two more punches. This time, the target was Frost Behemoth's eyes. A scream that spread across the entire battlefield came from the body of Frost Behemoth. Su-bai's two punches directly exploded Frost Behemoth's eyes, turning them into two holes with blood flowing continuously. Frost Behemoth, who lost his eyes, finally entered a state of madness. He couldn't see everything, but still relied on his instinct and sense of smell. He kept waving his giant claws. He tore wildly, struggled to get up, and even used his bloody mouth to destroy all surrounding matter. Destroy everything. The out-of-control Frost Behemoth fights to the death, and has a power that cannot be faced head-on. Su-bai avoided the final sharp edge of Frost Behemoth and appeared 1,000 meters away. At this moment, Su-bai's hands were crossed and raised high above his head. Just the way to start the galaxy starburst. With Su-bai's current physical condition, it is actually extremely difficult to use the galaxy starburst. Even with the energy input from the Golden Saint cloth, the sunlight in this frost world is too weak to support it. But from the moment he entered Jotunheim, the small universe that absorbed war began to absorb and store the power of war crazily. At this moment, all the power of war was turned into fuel, causing Su-bai's small universe to burn to the limit again. 0. Please give me flowers. As soon as the Milky Way starburst gesture appeared, an extremely powerful pressure came from Su-bai's body, rising steadily upwards. The entire space seemed to have solidified, and then trembled like fear. Putting on the Golden Saint clothes, he used the galaxy star explosion again. The power has been increased again. The energy contained in Su-bai's hands made everyone tremble with fear and dare not look directly. Only Diana, who had seen this move, let out a huge amount of shout. "Don't be stunned, everyone get down here." Down. 0. It was at this moment that Su-bai's eyes only saw the figure of Frost Behemoth, and his hands suddenly opened. White light, endless pressure, and endless impact all exploded at this moment. The rotating destructive energy props up a semicircular energy field that keeps spreading. The concentrated energy was so huge that the entire Jotunheim was trembling. Within the scope of the galactic starburst, all the snowy mountains and glaciers were torn into tiny particles in the vacuum state, and everything was annihilated. Before the white light came, Frost Behemoth let out a final roar, and then melted into the white light, no different from the ending of other substances. Everything has turned white. Even the thoughts of the living people who have witnessed all this have turned white. Under the repeated impact of Subai's manifestations, they have temporarily lost their ability to think. Can one person turn the tide of the war? The answer given by many Asgard warriors before is no. But at this moment, they believed and were sincerely convinced. There is a kind of person who can become a hero who can turn the tide of a war. After the remaining energy of the galactic starburst disappeared, the battle situation was determined, and there were no other variables. Whether they were frost giants or Asgard warriors, they all stared blankly at the nearly 10,000-meter wide deep pit, constantly moving their Adam's apples. This is the power of Subai, destroying all destructive power. A powerful blow sealed the victory. When they came back to their senses, although no sound came out, they still shouted or screamed and continued their final madness on the battlefield. Only near the ice throne, the battle is still stalemate. The armor of God King Odin has been covered with a layer of frost. There is also a blood hole on the left shoulder of the frost giant Lof. Every time the two fought, the surrounding space continued to vibrate, and the remaining power of the shockwave destroyed all nearby materials. Lof, it's over. The eternal spear in Odin's hand swept away, and he opened a position. This god king obviously did not want the war with the frost giants to come at this time. Although there is a feud between the two races, the Aesir Protoss is at the key to returning to the Earth moment and do not want to fall into the quagmire of war again. Lof looked at the messy battlefield, watching the frost giants retreating steadily. A chill flashed in his eyes. It's your son, coming to Jotunheim to provoke. That's right, but the frost giant offended first. Let's end this now and don't let the frost giant's blood flow anymore. Odin rarely exercised his patience and wanted to postpone the real time of the cruel war, so that at least the Aesir clan could gain a firm foothold on the earth. As Odin's old rival, how come Lof doesn't know Odin's plan? The return of the Aesir to Earth is a major event in the Nine Realms. If it weren't for the appearance of Subai, Lof would even be confident that he could defeat the Aesir clan in one fell swoop in the next war. The frost giants are not without allies. Lof snorted coldly and said calmly, "We don't have so many diplomatic words to say, the Father of God. Your son, he has achieved the purpose of coming to Jotunheim, war and death. Odin, you have won this battle, but the war has just been ignited. The frost giants will one day enter Asgard." After finishing his words, Lof turned his head and glared at Subai fiercely. It is precisely because of Subai's appearance that the entire battle situation quickly reversed. The scale of victory that originally tilted towards the frost giants could not bear the weight of Subai alone. This look contains hostility and caution. Even the king of frost giants, Lof, would not dare to underestimate the combat power that Subai just displayed. God King Odin also set his sights on Subai. It was precisely because of Subai's excellence that Thor looked dim and had a sigh in his heart. Subai, he is better than any other god's son. At this time, Lof's ice throne suddenly began to rotate, and an extremely tyrannical force filled the entire Jotunheim. The earth cracked, and deep invisible ravines extended for thousands of meters. A desolate horn sound spread throughout the battlefield. The frost giants being chased by the Aesir Protoss slid down the ravine without any hesitation. For the Aesir Protoss, this was an abyss of ice and snow, but it was the best for the frost giants. Hid in place, whenever the sunlight is strongest for hundreds of years, the frost giants will sneak into the ground. The frost giants left corpses one after another and slid into their natural refuge. Chasing the last frost giant on the ice sheet and cutting it to the ground, the remaining Asgard warriors let out a thunderous cheer without any hesitation. Most of their eyes were focused on Subai, who was suspended in the air with a calm look, calmly accepting all the looks of admiration and admiration. Congratulations, Master, 24% of the Aesir clan's attitude towards you has become reverence. If more than the average Aesir have respect for you, you can complete the mission, gain the respect of the Aesir and get 3 points of exchange points. The reminder of the Wheel of Time rang in Subai's ears. After repeated experiences, Subai's redemption points once again accumulated to 20,000 points, and she was only half the distance from the remaining 30,000 points. With this group of Aesir warriors returning to Asgard, they will gain more people's worship. At the moment, Su-bai had a strange feeling in his heart, as if these warriors had wisps of light red energy being plundered by Su-bai. That's right, it's plunder. Originally, this light red energy would be integrated into the gods of the Aesir clan along the established trajectory. At this moment, in the midst of victory and glory, the power of faith of these pure warriors was lost to Bai Lun. Su-bai's originally slightly tired body returned to perfect condition in a short time, and even the strength of the small universe was rising very slowly. Only God King Odin discovered the mystery of this, but instead of trying to figure it out, Odin summoned the eight-legged Pegasus and led him to Su-bai. This is the eight-legged horse that has accompanied me in countless battles in the star field. Su-bai, ride on it. Su-bai, ride up. The eight-legged horse's hooves lifted slightly, and it stopped in front of Su-bai. It let out a sigh, and a golden light flashed in its eyes. After looking at Su-bai, it became completely quiet. This mount, which only belongs to the God King, recognized Su-bai. Everything in front of them was so unbelievable that everyone held their breath and quietly witnessed the birth of a new legend. God King Odin gave up his mount and let an earthling ride it. Su-bai stroked the horse's back gently and felt the joy of the eight-legged horse. He chuckled, got on the horse, and praised, "What a horse!" As if sitting on the clouds, the eight-legged divine horse leaps high, galloping in the flying white frost, and runs over the heads of the Aesir gods on the battlefield. This is a glory that only belongs to Su-bai, and is fully recognized by the God King Odin. Glory. At this moment, Thor, looking at this scene, couldn't help but feel jealous in his heart. Even though he was the son of God King Odin, he had never been qualified to ride an eight-legged horse, let alone another son of God, Loki, with both hands. When he clenches his fist, the veins are already popping out. Diana raised her little face, her eyes flashed with brilliance, and she stared at Su-bai closely, with pride written all over her face. After traveling around for a while, the eight-legged horse returned to Odin. This magical horse has the ability to travel across the sea of stars and shuttle between star fields. I am old and want to find a good owner for it. I hope that you, Su-bai, can become its next owner. Only you are worthy of it. Someone else. Odin's words were like a bomb thrown into the calm lake. No Aesir Protoss could remain calm. Even Su-bai himself was slightly surprised. He didn't expect that Odin would actually give him an eight-legged horse as a thank you gift. Su-bai. Nothing is good without reason. Su-bai definitely understood that it was precisely because he participated in this war and stood on the side of the Aesir Protoss that Odin gave him a horse. Without Su-bai's participation in the battle between the Aesir Protoss and the Frost Giants would be difficult to determine the outcome in a short period of time, and the casualties would be staggering. And the eight-legged horse is indeed magical. When Su-bai was riding it, he felt the connection between people and the horse. If the eight-legged horse were to accelerate at full speed, even Su-bai would not be able to catch up with it. This is not an exaggeration. If the speed of light is placed on the Earth, it is the maximum speed found for the motion of objects in nature. But at such a speed, it is impossible to travel between galaxies. The closest galaxy to the Milky Way is the Andromeda Galaxy, which is 2.2 million light-years away from Earth. Even if we fly in a straight line at the speed of light, it will take 2.2 million years to reach it. The distance from the Sun to the center of the Milky Way is approximately 26,000 light-years. The nearest fixed star to the solar system is also 4.22 light-years away. What's more, Su-bai's current speed is only close to the speed of light. Therefore, if you want to travel across the planet, you must have a spaceship with a warp engine, capable of super light flight, or one that can fly at super light speeds like the Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One or the Great Magician Merlin. Break the space rules and perform space jumps. This eight-legged horse has the ability to jump in space and can travel between the stars. This is an ability that Su-bai currently does not have. Thank you God King for the gift of the horse. Su-bai was definitely not polite. After expressing his gratitude to Odin, he honestly took the golden bell from Odin's hand. It was a prop for summoning the eight-legged horse. Usually, the eight-legged god inhabits an alien world full of light elements, degree space. From then on, other Asgardians just believed the facts before them. In the long history, the eight-legged horse, which symbolized one of the identities of God King Odin, actually became everything in Suzhong. This is a new mythological epic, enough to be recorded in the history of the Asgard people. There is no doubt that even Odin is impressed by Subai. After doing all this, Odin looked at Thor, with unconcealable disappointment in his eyes. Odin casually summoned a general, and after determining the next defense strategy, the eternal spear in his hand shook, and a burst of white light descended, covering Subai and others. When Subai regained his sight, he found that he was already in Odin's golden hall. Subai could clearly see the anger in Odin's eyes, but Thor didn't know it yet. After discovering that he was teleported to the golden hall, Thor's expression was slightly stunned. In his opinion, the war with the frost giants had just begun. Why did you send us back, Wang Qinhao? The three of Subai, plus Loki and Sif, are all extremely important combat forces. Thor does not understand Odin's intentions. Odin's tone was full of anger, barely suppressed, and asked, "Do you know what you did?" "What did I do? I was protecting our home. Those frost giants must learn to fear me, just like they once feared you." Even though Thor left many scars on his body, he did not give in at this moment. He felt he did nothing wrong at all. It was the frost giant who provoked him first. He must preserve the glory of the Aesir clan. At this moment, Odin's anger finally reached its peak, and the conflict between father and son inevitably broke out. Thor's stubbornness made Odin's anger reach its peak. The eternal spear in his hand hit hard, and the whole Asgard trembled. You can't even protect your friends, and you still want to protect your kingdom. These proud words are not what a leader should say. Thor, you have completely forgotten what I gave you, as a good warrior should have the patience. This time, the majesty of the God King was undoubtedly revealed, a powerful aura rippled out, and the majestic pressure actually made people feel uncomfortable breathing. Subai, who was under the throne, was specifically observing Loki's expression and found that there was a flash of struggle in the latter's eyes. Seeing this scene, even Loki himself didn't know why he felt so happy in his heart, why he still felt a trace of guilt, and even didn't want to see the scene in front of him happen. His expression was very calm, and his inner emotions were so majestic that it was difficult to express in words. Under the powerful power of Odin, Thor aroused his desire to win, and the expression on his face was still arrogant. While you were waiting patiently, the 9 realms are laughing at us. The Father of God, your style of conduct is outdated. When the frost giants infiltrated Asgard, you were still making long speeches. If we don't take action, we will lose the glory of the Aesir clan. The confrontation between Thor and Odin brought the atmosphere to a climax. Sif hesitated to speak several times, but finally did not speak. As for Subai, Diana, and Logan, they will not express their opinions at this time. This is a family matter of the Odin family. Subai is not even an Aesir. Even if he wants to help Thor, he is not arguing with Odin about the right and wrong of things at this moment. Thor does need to grow, like a bright gem that has been polished beforehand. Subai was just a little worried about Loki. Thor's loss of respect will only be of great benefit to Loki. At this time, Diana's extremely quiet voice reached Subai's ears. Subai, what exactly is the 9 realms? 9 realms are 9 planets that are centered on the Earth and move in special orbits. Some of them are within the solar system, and some are deviated from the solar system. The shape of their distribution exactly outlines the shape of a big tree. Subai transmitted his thoughts into Diana's mind, and Odin, who was in the confrontation, finally sighed and said in disappointment, Thor, you are such a vain, greedy, and cruel child. By the end of Odin's words, it had turned into a curse. Even as tough as Thor, being so denied by his biological father brought his emotions to the edge of losing control. Thor waved his hand, and his anger had made him lose his mind, shouting, and you are an old fool. This roar spread throughout Asgard, and even God Queen Frigga was disturbed and rushed here in a hurry. Being scolded by his own son, Odin actually lowered his head and showed a self-deprecating smile. Yes, I was confused. I actually felt so confused that I thought you were already prepared. Aji, things were getting out of control, and Loki was a little panicked. He stepped forward, but before he could speak, Odin stared at him with a scowl and let out a roar. This roar was like a big word, go, hitting Loki's face. Loki, who was still a little regretful, suddenly turned extremely gloomy. He placed his hands docilely in front of him, lowered his head, and quietly stepped aside. Odin's divine power suddenly began to surge. He raised the eternal spear high, and the entire Asgard was shrouded in his divine power, and the majestic voice spread throughout the entire divine realm. Thor Odinson, you betrayed the edict issued by the God King. Because of your arrogance and ignorance, the peaceful 9 realms and those innocent lives have once again suffered the poison of war. You do not deserve the trust of the Aesir. You are not worthy of your status as the son of God. You don't deserve Mjolnir in your hands. You don't deserve it. Because of your recklessness, you betrayed the people who love you. Odin's majestic power enveloped Thor, but Thor was still in shock. He probably did not expect that Odin's punishment would be so severe, and his heart was filled with bitterness. Thor, I am going to take away your power now. At this moment, Odin's face had returned to calmness, leaving only the coldness and majesty of the God King. In Thor's disbelieving eyes, the armor on his body quickly fell off, and even Mjolnir floated into the air and floated to Odin's side. In the name of my father and all my ancestors, I, Odin, the father of God, command that Thor Odinson be banished. The eternal spear waved, and a huge amount of energy channel emerged in Asgard. Thor, who had been doted on since childhood, did not realize the seriousness of the problem until this moment, but he had no chance to regret it. The divine power in his body drained rapidly, and he could no longer withstand the suction of the energy channel, and let out a cry of unwillingness. This arrogant Thor was exiled by Odin himself. After the energy channel absorbed Thor, it did not close immediately. Odin looked at Mjolnir. This famous artifact was held in Odin's hand. He whispered, no matter who wields this hammer, anyone who is qualified will gain the power of Thor. After the words fell, Mjolnir turned into a ray of blue electric light and also threw himself into the energy channel. After doing all this, Odin showed an extremely tired look on his face. After sighing deeply, he showed an apologetic smile to Subai and others, leaving a lonely and old figure behind, and walked deep into Asgard. Go. In Odin's opinion, even Subai is more qualified to be a god king than Thor at the moment. Subai's temperament is transparent, like water and wind, invisible, not enthusiastic, and can easily be covered up by the colors around him, but as long as Subai works hard, his colors will be pervasive. This is the potential to become a god king. Unfortunately, Subai is not an Aesir god and cannot ascend the throne of Asgard. After banishing Thor, Odin felt extremely tired. After the 3 of them exchanged looks, Subai and Sif walked out of Asgard and went to a side hall. Sif sighed. Worry was already written on his face when Thor was exiled. Thor shouldn't have been allowed to go, I should have stopped him. Diana patted Sif's shoulder comfortingly. Logan crossed his arms and said softly, I have only known Thor for a short time, but even I know that no one can stop him. I just didn't expect that Odin would banish him. The God King's the cruelty is beyond my imagination. Subai's face was very calm and he said softly, at least he was exiled at that time and is not dead yet. As long as he is alive, there will be Asgard. Quote. Logan shrugged, but agreed with Subai's point of view. He took out a cigar, thought about it, put it back in his pocket, and asked, then what should we do now? Now before Subai, there are 2 choices. First, turn a blind eye, leave Asgard as if nothing happened and you don't know anything. Second, by staying, Subai knows that Loki has already been spying on the throne of the God King and will definitely take action. No one can predict what will happen after Loki sits on the throne of the God King. At the moment, Sif looked at Subai with pleading eyes. Perhaps only Subai could help Thor. Even Diana, who hated Thor, was unwilling to leave at the moment. If it weren't for the purpose of building the Aegis of Aegis, Sif would have enough time to persuade Thor that this has something to do with us. Subai, we can't just walk away like this. Diana found a reason and stared at Sue expectantly. Bye. Before Subai could reply, there were hurried footsteps again, and Queen Frigga suddenly walked into the palace, with the same worried look on her face. At this time, Sif seemed to have new hope. He walked quickly to Frigga and asked softly, Queen God, you must persuade Odin to change his mind. So what if I go? I love Thor more than any of you. But you know what he is like, he is arrogant, he is reckless, and even dangerous. Frigga sighed helplessly, but wanted to see what Subai had in mind. The battle with the frost giants is about to begin, but Thor has been exiled. This is not good news for the entire Aesir clan. Su-bai thought for a while and said, care will lead to chaos, don't worry too much. After saying that, Su-bai quickly walked out of the palace and walked up Bifrost. At the moment, the giant teleportation channel on Bifrost is becoming more and more crowded, with hundreds of spaceships constantly shuttled, and batches of materials are transported to Jotunheim to build defenses. The war between the Aesir Protoss and the Frost Giants has begun. Su-bai walked through Bifrost, and soon reached the end, where he saw Heimdall, the caretaker holding a golden giant sword, who had obviously arrived at Su-bai's arrival. With Loki's magic power, letting a few Frost Giants enter Asgard is nothing. Su-bai's first sentence attracted Heimdall's attention, and he was a little surprised. Unexpectedly, Su-bai also discovered this unusual thing. Heldam turned around and said with admiration, I saw everything. You controlled the entire battlefield. The God King handed over the 8-legged horse to you. You are already a legend in Asgard. His tone became lower again. I also saw Thor being exiled. Maybe you don't know, before they left, Loki told me to go to God King Odin, but obviously I went late, so they shouldn't be allowed to reach Jotunheim. So, Loki is a dangerous person, isn't he? I feel it. He is jealous of Thor. Maybe everything is in his plan. You should see his soul. Having said this, Su-bai chuckled and stared into Heimdall's light green eyes. Heldam was silent for a while before speaking. I can no longer pry into his thoughts, just like you. Besides, after Thor was exiled, he has become the only son of God. I abide by the ancient promise and be loyal to the God King, and Loki is already the sole heir of God. Su-bai raised an eyebrow and pretended to be amazed. Oh, so Loki's plan has been successful. Has Loki's plan been successful? Colluded with the Frost Giants, let them come to steal the treasure during the most important celebration of the Aesir clan, and then encouraged his brother to start a war and bear the consequences of the God King. Anger. When Thor loses respect, he can become Odin's only choice and peek under the throne to see the throne of the God King. Everything goes so naturally, and the title of God King seems to be within easy reach. And in the process, he not only wanted to murder his brother, but also deceived his father and everyone in Asgard who loved him. Heimdall, this is my guess, what's your opinion? After Su-bai's words, Heimdall's face became more solemn, and he was struggling deep in his heart. You mean, Loki is not worthy of sitting in the open seat? There was a sneer on Su-bai's lips and he shook his head. To be honest, I think Loki is more qualified to be the king. But I can't let him ascend the throne. Why? Heimdall was a little confused. Sometimes, you have to do something for your friends. Loki will remove obstacles and thorns. He will deal with Thor. He will deal with Sif. He will deal with Diana. I noticed it several times. Here he is, spying on Diana's thunder powers. Definitely, he will not ignore my existence. Heimdall nodded very confidently. Indeed, you are already very famous among the warriors of Asgard, even more than Thor. My sister Sif has always liked that little fool Thor, even because of Sif. You can only stand on the trustees' side. And you who have just gained glory have naturally become a stumbling block, because as long as you raise your arms, a group of warriors will hesitation and return to Thor's command. However, Heimdall paused and said very solemnly, however, God King Odin is still alive and everything is under Odin's control. Su-bai chuckled. What if one day, God King Odin fell into a deep sleep? Or disappeared? Heimdall was shocked all over. This was not an exaggeration. He had been guarding Bifrost and clearly remembered that after the battle with the Frost Giants 1,000 years ago, Odin fell into a long sleep. After being silent for a long time, Heimdall finally sighed and closed his eyes. When he opened them again, there was no more hesitation in his eyes. Tell me, what do you need me to do? Su-bai finally breathed a sigh of relief. If he could not successfully persuade Heldam, he would really fall into a passive position. Where was Thor exiled to? Find Thor first. The butterfly's wings have already flapped, so Su-bai will naturally not follow the previous memory. Heldam's eyes are the best weapon to find Thor. Green light flashed in his eyes, and countless scenes appeared in Heimdall's mind. Even with this pair of eyes that could monitor the 9 realms, it took 10 minutes to find Thor's whereabouts. Sweden, a man named Mal in the silent town, he lost his divine power and was at a loss. Su-bai nodded and asked again, what about Mjolnir? Is he also nearby? The green light in Heimdall's eyes flashed again, but this time the search speed was very fast. Huh. Mjolnir is actually near Tønsberg, Norway. Is something wrong? Subai didn't quite understand Heimdall's confusion. Helldum breathed out a breath and did not answer immediately. His thoughts were spinning rapidly, and after a while, he finally spoke. Thousands of years ago, the decisive battle between God King Odin and Lof was in Tønsberg. Odin lost his right hand. At the cost of his eyes, he defeated Lof and took away the ancient winter coffin. At the same time, the large Magellanic Cloud is 260,000 light-years away from the solar system, above the Krelar planet. In the dense forest-like building complex, an obelisk-shaped building is as straight as the sky. On the top floor, on the light red throne of power, sits a 3-meter-tall K with faint blue skin. People. The Kree man on the throne is also a top figure in the Kree Empire, which spans 3 galaxies, has a population of 30 billion, and controls hundreds of billions of slaves. His name spreads throughout the universe, and he is often dubbed the Controller by other species in the universe. Accuser. Ronin. Ronin is one of the 7 members of the Supreme Council of the Empire, and is responsible for the affairs of the Empire, large and small. At this moment, he closed his eyes slightly, as if he was waiting for something. Not long after, a blue light screen suddenly appeared in front of him, and the face of another Kree appeared. Sir Roland, a fully loaded resource collection ship of the Kree Empire, lost contact in the solar system. There are 4 Kree Empire citizens on board. Judging from the last news, it is very likely that they were attacked by Asgardians. Asgardians. Ronin, who was sitting on the throne, opened his eyes and raised a contemptuous smile at the corner of his mouth. Is that Asgard, who has a reputation for martial arts and wants to challenge Kree and become one of the 5 empires? He overestimates his own capabilities and actually attacks the Kree Empire's spaceship. The Kree in the light screen said respectfully, and this resource collection ship is loaded with resources from nearly 1,000 colonies, including precious metal resources, vibranium. Just when the spacecraft was about to enter the solar system, the Asgard people took the lead in sending out statement prohibiting other interstellar civilizations from colonizing the Earth. After that, our ship lost contact. There is no doubt that it was the Asgardians who launched the attack. Ronin snorted coldly. This is a conspiracy, and it is also a blatant provocation. The Kree people in the light screen were immediately filled with righteous indignation and cursed the Asgard people. After that, a sinister smile appeared on their faces, but according to reliable information, the Asgard people are also in trouble. They are fighting with the frost giants. Let's fight. The latter is powerful enough to drag Asgard into the quagmire of war. Oh, a playful smile appeared on Ronin's face, and with a wave of his hand, another light blue screen immediately appeared out of thin air. When he focused his eyes, a series of information appeared. Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One, Magician Association. He tapped the throne seat gently with his right hand. Even Ronin did not dare to ignore the reputation of Sorcerer Supreme. But this is indeed a good opportunity for the Kree Empire to gain a complete foothold in the galaxy. Give me the order to have the Empire's 3rd fleet, which is on standby outside the Milky Way, immediately head towards the solar system. Ronin stood up, holding the blue scepter in his hand. The end of the Asgard people is coming soon. Even the Sorcerer Supreme can't stop the Kree. On the other side, Asgard is the treasure house of the God King. A light blue box is placed quietly on the stone platform. If you get close, you can feel the powerful magic contained in it. There was no sound of footsteps, and a figure appeared out of thin air. He pressed his slender hands on the box. The tyrannical energy began to flow through his body, and he couldn't help but let out a soft roar. This is the power that blends with his bloodline, enough to make him equal to or even surpass the God King. The owner of these slender hands is none other than Loki. Stop! A shout came, and another figure shone behind Loki. God King Odin held the eternal spear and stared at Loki with great vigilance. Odin knows better than anyone the horror of this blue treasure box, the ancient winter coffin. The power of ice contained in it is enough to freeze the entire solar system, bringing endless fear and cold that will never be released. Even 1,000 years ago, Odin relied on the power of the Tesseract to defeat Lof and seize the ancient coffin. Nowadays, the Tesseract is no longer in Asgard, and the ancient winter coffin has become the most terrifying artifact. The appearance of Odin did not exceed Loki's expectations. Instead of stopping, Loki held the ancient winter coffin tightly in his hands. Am I cursed? Turning around, Loki's face was covered with light blue lines, his whole body exuded a chill, and he had gray-white body hair growing, no different from an ordinary frost giant. During the war with the frost giants, Loki was accidentally touched by a frost giant and discovered the secret hidden in his blood. He is actually a frost giant. The scene in front of him made Odin's heart hang. After Thor made a big mistake and was exiled, he didn't want to lose this child again. No, you are not cursed. With a sarcastic smile on Loki's face, he spread his hands and roared, then who am I? With such skin, do you still want to tell me that I am an Asgardian and the child of the God King? I defeated Lof 1,000 years ago. After that, what you take away is not just the ancient winter coffin, right? Isn't that right? Facing Loki's question, Odin felt a trace of guilt in his heart. He sighed deeply and said, yes, after defeating Lof, we entered Jotunheim. In Lof's holy place, I saw a child, you. Compared to other children of frost giants, you are too small and small. You are abandoned, tortured, and may die at any time. Loki's whole body was shaking. Even though he had been mentally prepared, he still couldn't accept the embarrassing fact that he was actually the son of the frost giant King Loki. Quite the opposite of his identity as the son of god Asgard. Why do you want to bring me back when your hands are stained with the blood of the frost giant? You have other purposes. Loki roared unwillingly, and with his intelligence, he instantly realized, Odin's purpose in bringing him back was to hope that one day he could be crowned king. Not the king of Asgard, but the king of the frost giants. The stripped reality was even colder than the power of ice transmitted from the ancient winter coffin. Loki's trembling body finally became calm, but 2 lines of ice blue tears flowed from his eyes. Loki, you are an innocent child. Indeed, at that time, I thought that the frost giants and the Aesir Protoss would one day unite to ensure permanent peace. Past. But those plans have become a passing thing. Odin did not weave lies. As a god king, he often first considers how to strengthen the entire Protoss. Just like before, he wanted to absorb Diana into the Aesir Protoss. This is the most basic responsibility and obligation of a god king. But he didn't think about Loki. It was only at this moment that the God King realized that all this was really unfair to Loki. Because of Asgard's martial ethos, everyone likes Thor, who is strong and powerful, and ignores the existence of Loki, a magician. Odin saw everything, but had no intention of changing it. Instead, he loved Thor even more. Even after banishing Thor, Odin was still worried about who could succeed the God King, and once again ignored Loki. Loki was speechless, but the speed of absorbing the power of ice suddenly increased a few points, and the entire ancient winter coffin bloomed with a blue color. This is an artifact belonging to the frost giant family, not to mention that Loki is of royal blood and the most orthodox successor to the ancient winter coffin. Odin felt the unbridled chill, and the worry in his eyes grew stronger, and he shouted, Loki, stop quickly, put down the unclean artifact in your hand. Don't let me down, don't let your mother down. Loki's voice became colder and colder, but I am a frost giant. Now I finally understand why you have always preferred this one for so many years. The ancient winter coffin was lifted high. At the moment, Loki had completely transformed into the form of a frost giant. His whole body was covered by the power of ice and snow. The entire treasure house was condensed with a layer of frost. Even as Odin, his pupils were slightly shrinking. Loki, who has controlled the ancient winter coffin, is strong enough to rival him. Odin held the eternal spear in front of him, his heart filled with bitterness. The cold wind roared, blowing up his white hair, making him look even more desolate. Loki, you are my child. But no matter how much you claim you love me, you will never be able to let a frost giant ascend the throne of Asgard. Amidst the roar, the ancient winter coffin floated up on its own. Loki's hands condensed powerful ice power and shot towards Odin in the form of a beam of light. Odin's armor was covered with a layer of white frost. The tip of the eternal spear moved forward, and all the divine power released was extended by the white and blue color. At the same time, a 3-meter-high shadow appeared behind Odin. It emerged from the space in an extremely strange way, revealing its figure. Its whole body exudes metallic luster, and its eyes are pregnant with golden destructive energy. In Odin's incredible eyes, it shoots two powerful golden rays of light, hitting Odin's back. Jira sounded, and Odin groaned. He never expected that Loki would actually control the guardian of the treasure house, the destroyer armor. Hit by the sudden attack, half of Odin's body has been completely frozen. Look, half of the artifacts in this treasure house were obtained by me. I have paid so much for Asgard, but you have never valued me. Loki yelled, his face gradually becoming distorted. I can obviously do better, why don't you give me a chance? Even Subai is more loved by you than me. Why? Odin stopped answering and sighed deeply. Endless fatigue and helplessness arose in his heart. The divine power in his body stopped functioning, allowing the power of frost to roam freely, turning him into an ice statue. It was only at this moment that Loki stopped releasing the power of ice, collapsed on the ground, gasped for air, and let out a crazy laugh. Did you feel it? There was a powerful burst of power in the direction of Asgard, and it quickly disappeared. On the other side, Subai, who had just returned from Bifrost, good money gathered with Diana and Logan, raised his head and looked in the direction of Asgard. Subai's brows were already furrowed. Faced with Diana's prompt, he asked softly, "Where is Sif?" Diana turned to look in the direction of Asgard. She and the Queen of Gods are going to plead with Odin to cancel the decision to banish Thor. I'm afraid that the God King of Asgard is no longer Odin. Subai secretly thought in his heart, Loki's ruthlessness and decisiveness were indeed beyond Subai's imagination. Once Thor was exiled, he chose to take action without hesitation. He was too eager to be affirmed. Hurry to Asgard. By the time Subai and others arrived at Asgard, Sif already looked confused and stood at the gate of Asgard at a loss. It wasn't until Subai appeared that she felt slightly relieved. Sif walked up to Subai eagerly. Just now, God King Odin entered his eternal sleep. Subai nodded. Asgard's guards did not want to stop him. When he walked into Asgard's hall, he could see the figure in front of the throne. It was Loki. My friends. Loki turned around with a look of sorrow on his face. Anyone could see it. Whether the sadness written on his face was real or fake was up to you to tell. Subai's eyes roamed Loki's body, and he said coldly, I want to see Li Gong. Loki put away his expression and slowly stood up from the throne. My father has entered Odin's eternal sleep. He is worried that he will never wake up. If you have anything, please tell me. Now, I am the king of Asgard. The entire Asgards were shaken, and it could be clearly felt that Loki's body exuded an extremely powerful magic power, which was not at the same level as the previous ones on the battlefield. The new powerful power came from the ancient winter coffin. Naturally, it also had a chill, and a cold wind began to howl. Immediately afterwards, another majestic blazing power burst out from Subai's body. The phoenix golden saint cloth absorbed the energy from the sun and emitted constant heat. Confront the calendar of ice. Throughout the temple, hot and cold forces interacted with each other, forming a huge amount of aura very quickly. The strong cyclone released made it difficult for people to open their eyes. I want to see Odin. I said, Odin has entered his eternal sleep, and the queen has appointed me as the new king. Then I'll talk to the queen. AJDC, we can't interrupt you now. Loki sneered, and the energy in his body became more and more agitated. Besides, what's the use of going to see Odin now? A flash of light flashed in Subai's eyes, and he said word by word, because I suspect that someone is coveting the throne and murdering the God King. The scepter in Loki's hand turned into the eternal spear at some point. With one blow, the whole Asgard was shocked. Humans from Midgard, do you know what you are talking nonsense? Asgard is in the middle of a war. Our people need to unite. At this moment, we must unite as one, so as not to be afraid. This is not only for Asgard, but also for your planet. You must know that now, the frost giants may invade humans at any time. World. Subai, don't let the whole Asgard lose trust in you. After all, you have just returned with honor. At this moment, Subai raised his hands high above his head, and a vast energy began to gather. I really can't live up to Asgard's expectations, because the thief I suspect is sitting upright on the throne. Loki, let me go see Odin to find out the truth and see if your power remains in him, or whether it's a matter of competition. In an instant, the atmosphere reached its peak of tension. Diana frowned and couldn't help but release the power of thunder. The thunder and lightning stirred up Subai's momentum. Sif and Logan are also watching eagerly and are ready to fight. Only a group of guards still in Asgard were completely thrown into chaos. On one side were the new god kings who had just taken over, and on the other were the war heroes who had returned with honors. It was really difficult to decide which one to help. The corner of Loki's mouth twitched slightly. He must not let Subai look at Odin. Even the god queen Frigga would only see the illusion he decorated. Odin did fall into a long sleep, but he was frozen and had to fall into a long sleep. After the ice was released, the power of ice in his body suppressed Odin's vitality at all times, preventing him from dying and never being able to wake up again. Queen Frigga couldn't see it, but she might not be able to hide Subai's feeling. For Loki, the most dangerous person in Asgard is Subai. He had just sat on the throne and would never allow anyone to expose their conspiracy. The cold wind roared again, but he was not afraid of the huge pressure released by Subai. I said, I am the God King now. The next second, the energy condensed by both sides exploded. It was at this moment that a roar sounded, "Stop it all!" There was a loud boom, and a golden giant sword fell from the sky, releasing countless white light spots, forcibly blocking the two sides. The person who came was none other than Heimdall. Not only the guardian of Bifrost, he is also known as the god of the dawn. Everyone stop, now is not the time for internal fighting. I'm here to tell you some imminent horrific news. Heimdall glanced at Subai. After Subai dispelled the galaxy star explosion, he turned to stare at Loki. The latter snorted coldly and also returned to calm, slowly dissipating the accumulated energy. A fleet of the Kree Empire is leaping towards Asgard. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.